Okay, we are live. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining
Feels
us.
good to be alive.
Ha. Out of curiosity, if any, that was good. But,
No, it wasn't.
but you've got to commit to it. Like you can't make a joke and then
I
right
know.
away. That's
I
like your
bailed on
whole,
it. It wasn't
yeah.
good.
That was your shtick when you used to do your radio show for Karlsson University. Like everything you would say was afterwards you'd say wow, that like wasn't funny. I don't know. I felt like you were too self-effacing,
Okay,
but
I'll work on it.
I guess that's your thing.
Why didn't
Does
you
anyone
tell me
here?
this 15 years ago?
I don't know. You're like both self-effacing, but I think it's even because you're also like critical. Like you dish it out to the others just like you do to yourself. So I think that's
Yeah,
what's fair. Like you were
I
so
have high
mean to
expectations
Devin
for everyone.
Dubnyk. The Sharks are just trying to make a nice tweet, being like thanks, and then you're just like he sucked. Everyone look at his bad stats
But
and how bad he is.
that was a good tweet though, right?
Was
It was
it?
funny. They said thanks, and it's like, well, what are you thanking this guy for? He did nothing for you.
I mean, obviously, I don't know what to
Maybe
tell you.
maybe he was a great teammate.
He tried his best. Like you know that even when my company fires people, they don't actually write a scathing email to the company about like how bad they were. They say like, thanks for your contributions and good luck in the future.
Look, I didn't mean to be mean. It was
If
just like,
I feel like if he saw it, he'd be like, these guys are
I think he
harsh.
would have laughed.
He would have.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, well, it's the classic Brian Com humor. You have certain players that you hate, and anytime it's like if someone
No,
tweets
I don't.
saying that,
I'm not saying I hate him.
remember when there was that tweet that Mike Smith had a good game, and then you like right away had to make sure to like comment about all of his bad stats?
No,
You don't remember that? I'll find it.
sounds
It's
like
okay.
me.
You
I don't
have your
deny it.
ups. I could list them. Justin Schultz, you hate
No,
him.
no, you think I hate half the
Mart
league.
Martin Jones.
Anyone who I don't say buy into after their second hot
No, people
streak.
who Justin Schultz when we had him in our joint league. I remember every time I'd be like, "Who should we drop?" It was always Justin Schultz, even if like he had a good game. It's like we won't keep it up. It's over. On the
And
other hand,
how often was I right?
I guess I don't know,
90% of the time.
40, 30% of the time.
No.
What's his points per game? Let's do the math. Meanwhile, like Shane Goss's hair could be getting healthy scratch. He'd be like, he's good. Trust me, guys. This guy's got it. And hey, he's doing well now. I'm not saying
And
you're wrong. I'm just saying the truth of who you hate and who
so
you like.
let's see who. I don't hate Justin Schultz. I hate him less this year. I hate him less in Washington than I did on Pittsburgh. So Justin Schultz has 21 points in 38 games.
That's pretty good.
Goss has 15 points in 31 games. They're on like the same pace.
Yeah, but you definitely have a favorite of the two.
Yeah, because one of them plays on the top power play when they play.
Yeah. But I feel like if Justin Schultz was healthy scratched, you wouldn't be tweeting about how much of a travesty that is, as opposed to when Shane Goss's gets healthy
I have
scratched.
this right. Has Goss played 11 straight games for Philly now?
I don't know. I guess ever since he was waived. All right, we should probably start the show. Oh, I wanted to ask for anyone here that's joining us live. Hopefully, you enjoyed the pre-show banter. Do you hear a buzzing on Brian's end, or is it just me?
Don't confuse my chewing for buzzing.
Yeah, no, it's very noticeable to me. Like I can't not hear it. So if it's just me, I'll love that. But it's like extra loud now, actually. So I guess people need to catch up a bit in the chat.
I feel like there's like some some interference. I watched a great movie last night.
Was it called Interference?
No. It was called The Vast Night Sky or something. I don't even know if that was what it was called.
Oh no, Connie hears a buzzing, but Kay Towney doesn't. And Mason doesn't.
And
Adam says there is a buzz. Do you think it's like a frequency thing? Like how dogs could only hear certain frequencies? I wonder if me and Adam and Connie have that, ability to hear this frequency.
What do you want me to? I could restart. That's I think my best shot at nipping this.
Sir Fonty says it's there, but not annoying. I don't know if you heard what I heard.
Okay, well let me look. I'm gonna record on Audacity.
Yeah, do that.
And let's see. Hang on.
Yeah. I think
I'm going to hit record and we'll see if it tracks anything. I'm going to be quiet.
Okay.
It's flatlining. Let me play it back.
Yeah, I hear it so loudly. Oh my god.
No, there's nothing there.
All right. Well, obviously Brian is snacking, Prince. Like that's he doesn't eat.
Anyway, it was
Brian's meal time is the podcast time. Like he doesn't eat before. I don't know what he's doing the rest of the day, but he doesn't have time to eat clearly. Okay, so it's a full buzz. But you're saying it doesn't come through on Audacity, so I guess it'll just be a crappy YouTube video, but a good podcast.
Or maybe it's not even coming through on YouTube.
All right. I don't know. This is very weird.
What do you want to do about it?
I don't know. I guess maybe.
Do you want me to restart?
Oh yeah, these are some good tips. Do you have something nearby, like your phone?
Yeah, this is what I thought. So no, I'll turn Bluetooth off. Okay. This is when I was talking about the movie. There was some funny noises being played through a radio station on the.
Oh. Is it like hypnotizing people?
Well, I don't want to give too much away.
Okay, yeah, it's not too bad. Maybe you could.
Good movie, highly recommended.
What was it called?
Vast. Thanks. Okay, there's 3 of these 4 words are in the title. The Vast Night Sky.
Okay. I don't know.
I don't know in what order.
I don't know what to do, man. Maybe just
full buzz from RP. I'm a dog though.
Can you leave the call and come back? Maybe. Do you want to try to do that?
Quit Zoom?
Yeah, quit Zoom and come back. Yeah, Shams knows what I'm talking about. And RP, the people who don't hear the buzz, and Connie heard it. It's so weird. Why wouldn't we all hear it? Is this our best ever? We have like such a big show planned for today, and we're like already so late. So I guess we could all strap in. I've ranked every single team by their schedule. Oh, it's back. Whatever. Let's just record. Who cares?
It's gonna drive you batty.
Yeah, you just better be telling the truth that your Audacity doesn't pick it up. That's all I say. That's all I know. All right.
Could you imagine if when you edit, it's there?
Yeah, then I'll have to record an intro being like, sorry, everybody. The buzz went away when Brian left. Oh yeah, that's a for sure. The buzz goes away when he mutes.
So again, let me see what other apps are open here. Just close everything else on my computer.
I wish we were like a more like we need to get backed by some production company that can like take care of this stuff for us.
This is the first ever thing, just for the record.
The first ever in the history of the show. The first ever buzzing. I still think you should get a new microphone.
It's been a long time. Well, maybe I don't think it's the microphone. It's not coming through on my computer.
Younger ears hear more frequencies. Okay, can everyone please say their age and whether they could hear a frequency?
I know I hear frequencies because there's a little baby camera and I can hear it. Like I can hear the frequency in the baby's room and my wife can't. So I always turn it off and then she's annoyed when she wants to check the camera.
It's really loud now, so I don't know. Should we just cancel the show?
Cancel the show. Connie, I've definitely seen the episode, but I have a bad memory. And I would need more context, but I'm sure it was hilarious. So 30 Rock's the best.
We don't have time for this. 30 Rock. Brian has like 5 shows that he loves. Okay.
Name them.
It's The Simpsons, 30 Rock, Arrested Development. Maybe there's only 3 shows actually. Nothing from like the last
Bump in the Night.
All right, so what do you want to do? Do you want to just record it and hope for the best?
Oh, I have one idea.
No, I like 30 Rock. The best is I don't know if I'd say the best, but I liked it a lot. Like I watched it all.
I don't think you like it.
Brian, yeah, obviously like you like reference it all the time. Like so obviously you think it's the best. So Connie's with you. Don't boo me, please, Connie. Like, I'm not like
Elon just
I like
take a
Tina
little
Fey. I
break.
watched also Kimmy Schmidt. Did you watch all of Kimmy Schmidt, Brian? And Connie?
Yeah, I watched Kimmy Schmidt.
A true Tina Fey fan needs to have watched both, I guess.
I'm a true Tina Fey fan. Okay.
Oh, this buzzing. Oh my God. All right.
I'm just going to do something quickly.
You could restart or something.
Be able to hear you, but I want you to tell me if it changes. I'm going to come back in 5 seconds.
Okay. Sorry, everybody, for the technical difficulties.
Did the buzz still have it?
Yeah, I still hear it.
Okay. So do you want me to restart? It's going to drive you mad. I think I should restart.
Okay, I guess restart. Does anyone want to come on with me? Or if anyone wants to throw like a fantasy question out there while Brian's restart, you should restart. If anyone wants to throw...
Working on it.
This computer of yours.
It's not... Elon.
It's hard to
bought a new... You bullied me into buying a new computer.
I think you got the wrong one.
No.
He hates me. I wonder if Brian and I would be better or worse friends if we didn't do the show. Because if we did do the show, like because we do the show, we talk all the time. It's possible we could have lost touch. We live in different cities. But also we wouldn't have this like growing resentment towards each other for how I bullied him into buying a new computer. I don't hear the buzz when Brian's gone, that's for sure. Respond to the chat. Okay, let's look at some scores here. Let's do some scoreboard watching while we're waiting. So Miles Wood scored for Jesper Brattman. I already had him planned for the show. He's getting points almost every single game. Brian just is writing to me. Oh, this is exciting. His Mac is updating. Does that mean it's going to take forever? Oh no. I'm really not sure what the implications of this are. He just wrote, oh shit, my Mac is updating. It didn't tell me it was gonna. That sometimes takes like an hour. Maybe he could use a different computer. Doesn't his wife have a computer? Well, yeah, Mason heard it. Okay, well, in the meantime, what should we do? I could brag about how I clinched a tier 1 bye in the playoffs. Very exciting. Though big thanks to Tom Crowhurst for beating Marcus, which is what I needed to have happen in order to have a chance at the bye. Maybe Brian could join me through his phone at least while we're waiting, so he could at least banter with me. Sorry, everyone. Maybe this is a bad YouTube video for sure, and a bad live experience. Okay, let's see here. Is Jonas Johansson about to have back-to-back shutouts? Goalie controversies grub blows up tomorrow. Yeah, so it's very interesting, right? Because also Colorado just traded for Devin Dubnyk. Jonas Johansson, remember that Buffalo beat writer was like tweeting about how bad Jonas Johansson is and how Colorado was making a big mistake, and then he came in and had a bad game. But yeah, if he's about to have back-to-back shutouts, it's an interesting situation. I would think that like Grubauer's, I think, the clear starter. Like, I don't think he'll blow up tomorrow. But yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with the backup. I guess they could just like try to go back and forth. Obviously, but Colorado's smart to anyways have more backups because of what happened in the playoffs last year. Like, better safe than sorry, right? Prince is saying it seems Hall might go back to Edmonton. What's the latest? That's huge. I guess he doesn't have a choice, but that, I mean, it would definitely make a lot of sense for the Oilers. Like Dominic Cahoon on the line with Draisaitl hasn't worked out so well. Not that it's hurt Draisaitl's production. But yeah, the Oilers in their last game, are they still playing McDavid and Draisaitl together? The last game they had, yeah, back to Draisaitl, Yamamoto, Cahoon, and then McDavid, Ennis, Puljujarvi. Oh, right, because Nugent Hopkins is injured. Oh, Tyler Ennis. So how did he do? Well, Edmonton got shut out by Calgary. I already know how he did. Nothing. So I'm definitely not even going to bring up Tyler Ennis on the show. Plus, RNH might be back. And Edmonton doesn't even play, till Friday, right? Edmonton or Boston for Taylor Hall. So if Hall goes to Boston, that gets kind of interesting because Boston's been playing around with having Pasternak off the top line. But I'd imagine if they had Taylor Hall, then they would just put Pasta back on his line because that they know that works well. And then they could have Krejci with Ritchie and Hall, right? I guess that'd be good for Nick Ritchie. I mean, but that's assuming that Taylor Hall is even like great, which like I'm not like all of a sudden a Taylor Hall hater. I know like a lot of people on Twitter now are saying, oh, like no one should give anything for Taylor Hall. I think it's kind of wild that the Leafs gave a first round pick to get Nick Foligno. And it's like, did they have, I'm just having a conversation with myself here, but if anyone knows, did the Leafs have cap space to get Taylor Hall? Like if they would have sent the same package? Because I feel like what does Buffalo think they're going to get? Like a first round pick? I guess the Leafs first round pick is like the worst one because they're one of the good teams. Pasta back on the first line already. So yeah, Boston could use some help. It was Krejci, Nick Ritchie, and Karlsson Kuhlman I'm seeing, or maybe actually that's today's lines. Yeah, so I'd imagine that they're not seeing Karlsson Kuhlman as their long-term plan for the second line. Craig Smith is actually on a bit of a roll lately, but he's, I guess, just a bottom sixer. Leafs are tired of being beaten by Foligno in the playoffs. Okay. Yeah, I guess that Columbus has had their way with them. How could the Leafs, imagine if the Leafs lose again in the first round? It'd be so sad. Like, and I know that it's sometimes fun for people to see Leafs fans in pain, but I mean, I think they deserve like one playoff round win. The Vast of Night was a great movie. Okay, cool. Well, we'll have to let Brian know when he comes back that you like that movie that he recommended with the frequency. So what was it? Was it a hypnotizing frequency? Anyway, yeah, that would be weird to me if Nick Foligno ends up pulling a bigger package or similar package as Taylor Hall. But I guess it just goes to show how much Hall's reputation has gone down this year. Can they get a D+ Hall? Oh, we're talking about Boston now, I guess. Yeah, well, oh, look, Brian's back. Oh, man. What do you guys think? Is it going to be buzzing or no buzzing? Hopefully all of this was worth it to at least get it. Oh, hello. Oh, you're on your phone now, right?
Yeah, I'm guessing. I guarantee you, because it's been such a pain, I'm going to come back and you'll hear the buzzing.
How's the update looking?
Well, it doesn't really tell you. It just like loads the loading bar several times and then restarts and then loads the loading bar again. So do you want a live look at my computer updating?
Sure. Yeah. Let's see. Let's all see it.
Oh,
by the way, Sam says that he agrees that The Vast of Night was a great movie.
Oh, thanks, Sam. Oh, my screen is filthy. There you go. I'm not even gonna, that's gross. Get out of here. There you go.
I had a thought once about, did you ever try putting your computer on like a thing, like on a stand that like had that, but like a stand with holes in it? Like
I have.
I feel like that might help with the fan thing, but I don't know if that's going to help with the buzzing, obviously.
Send me one.
Okay.
I don't think it will. It's only going to get worse now that the weather's warming up. The winter's like the best chance. In the summer, forget it.
So you have a MacBook Pro. So maybe you should return this computer. Like it seems like it's faulty if it can't handle recording a podcast.
I don't know what to tell you, Elon.
Yeah,
we've been through this. Okay. I tried 3 different computers and I tried another MacBook Pro. Wow. Because I thought the first one was faulty.
That's wild. I didn't realize we were doing anything so crazy. Okay, laptop stand. All right. Anyways, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, Brian. What are your thoughts on Taylor Hall and his value compared to Nick Foligno?
Like rest of season?
Like I just mean in terms of like Nick Foligno just fetched a first, and I think a couple fourths.
What's the update? To who?
Nick Foligno's on the Leafs. He went to the Leafs.
Oh, I didn't know.
And I'm curious, and I feel like it'll be funny if Taylor Hall ends up not pulling as much or like even similar. But I just have this hunch that's what's going to happen. Oh, Brian's audio's worse now because he's not on his microphone. Is there a way to plug your microphone into your phone and then we could just do it this way?
No.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah. Who else? Was it David Savard was also when David Savard was traded for a first, it was just like, oh, there's no way the Taylor Hall package is, no one's going to pay more for Taylor Hall, especially without an extension. I think if he's traded unsigned, it's very possible that David Savard and Nick Foligno are comparable, which is like, honestly, if you can get Taylor Hall for the same price as you can get Nick Foligno and David Savard, do that. Like, I don't know if this means you can get Taylor Hall for a song or that you're overpaying for the other two guys. What do you think? Like, who would I want on my real life hockey team the rest of the year? This is the question.
Sure. Probably Taylor Hall, right?
Yeah.
Of course.
I'll take him on my fantasy team too. So the Leafs have added Nick Foligno and Riley Nash from Columbus, but Riley Nash is injured.
Yeah, the Leafs are loading up on these like older players, right? I guess they're
It's
seeing the
interesting.
success of Spezza. Now they get it.
Yeah. I think there's definitely been a market inefficiency of older guys who still have something left in the tank. You know, usually when you go like for veteran leadership, it's always like these like grizzled journeymen who like now you can call Thornton and Spezza that to some extent because they're playing the role, but you only ever go out and get guys who have played fourth line roles their whole career. And the Leafs are like, okay, we're going to go get top 6 guys who don't have much left in the tank.
And it's working. It reminds me of what the Leafs did that when they were tanking. Remember, they would like trade for all these older guys and then they would trade them at the trade deadline. It was a good. Are you still on? Is your address start with 124?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sending you this stand.
Oh, wow. What if it doesn't do anything?
Then, I don't know. It's $37.
No, that's pricey.
Well, okay. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't know. Let's just do it. Let's see.
Just send me $37 instead. I swear I'll spend it on the stand.
I don't believe you because you said you'd get a stand a while ago.
What is that?
I ordered it. It's a nice stand too. Maybe it'll help you for work also.
Can I stand while I have my computer on the stand?
No, I don't think it's not that big of a stand. But it's nice not to have like right on the desk. I think it's nice to have it. Then you get a little bit adjustable.
Somewhere between a stand and a sit. Maybe it's like a crouch.
Yeah.
That's the kind of joke of mine that you hate.
I don't hate it.
8 minutes remaining.
8 minutes. Oh my god.
Telling me now.
Does anyone want to come? Or like Brian? Do you want to just like talk about something? Let's do a. What do you want to talk about here?
Well, does anyone have questions? Like aside from
we could definitely answer
the Nick Foligno one. The Foligno, I guess. I mean, like I can just like shoot from the hip on Foligno joining the Leafs, and like definitely seems like a bottom 6 role player that they want for the playoffs. Like in their bottom 6, or maybe he sits on the second line. I guess I'm just thinking through the lens of does he replace Galchenyuk, who we're now excited about because he plays with Matthews and Marner. I don't think so, because it seems to be working well. And the media, the Toronto media has the center of the universe media has like gone so hard for the Alex Galchenyuk storyline. Like, I don't know if you've seen that article, like tweeted a gazillion times how the Leafs fixed Alex Galchenyuk, which is just like so presumptuous to start with.
Well, yeah, the thing that I would say with any of these types of like discussions is there's not even a point of being like, well, I don't see why they'd put Foligno on the first line because they're happy with Galchenyuk there. Because it's like things could change. Like, like it could be 2 games of Foligno in the bottom 6. And then if they lose one, all of a sudden they're like, okay, let's switch things up. We've got this guy. Let's put him as a left winger with Matthews and Marner.
And it's not like Alex Galchenyuk has never made a mistake, right? Like he seems pretty prone to
like I would definitely, So I would definitely say that this makes Galchenyuk's like spot a little more precarious, but like it already was very precarious anyways. Like he could have gotten, dropped to the 4th line or healthy scratched at any time. But yeah, right now, obviously he's just had a good game. But the Leafs won like 6-5 against Ottawa. So it's not as if like they won the game.
Did you watch that game?
No, I didn't.
Oh, it was like very close to the 5-1 collapse. And it was funny because like, it's like the Sens were putting on pressure and like they came really close to tying it. Then the Leafs got an empty netter to make it 6-4. And then the Sens scored with 15 seconds left to make it 6-5. And it's just like, I can't believe this is still not over. But it essentially was, obviously.
Yeah, I'm really glad I was already ahead by a decent amount in my cupful matchup because Jack Campbell
he had
would have been very bad night. By the way, so here's a fun question, which we already have planned. Some of this we already have planned for the show. I guess we can do it again. But like RP is asking, what do you see Gusev doing in Florida? I mean, so that, it depends so much on deployment, right? But all I could tell you is that right now the top line has been Barkov, Verhaeghe, and Mason Marchment. And I like Galchenyuk, right? I don't think Mason Marchment has done anything to, I've heard some quotes from Quenneville saying he likes what Marchment is bringing, but why not try Gusev there? So I feel like if Florida signed him, it's not to play him in a bottom six role because he's not that type of player. I don't think. I think he's like an offensive player. So I think that's be a very high upside for Gusev.
I mean, you could say the same thing about his time in New Jersey, right? Like, why wasn't New Jersey playing him like an offensive player? I don't know what went so sour between Gusev and the team, but definitely, and I will say this again, and hopefully not too long from now, but Gusev seems to be a good, at least tryout. They're paying him only $250,000 only, but like in NHL money, that's peanuts. They're essentially getting Gusev for free to say, hey, do you fit on this top line? But Duclair has obviously been there before, and he's coming back potentially Tuesday. But he's bounced around a little bit too.
Yeah, Duclair doesn't really, because I feel like they're gonna try Gusev there. Like obviously, like I think like when you say like New Jersey, why didn't they play him? I think like Lindy Ruff just grew to not like him, right? Like last year, Gusev was getting prime offensive minutes, and he started like really producing. But I guess maybe his defensive play. So maybe Florida's like, we don't care as much. Like obviously they're taking him knowing that he's been scratched in New Jersey for a reason. So probably they know that they don't think that he's good defensively, but they're maybe willing to be like, okay, let's just put him with Barkov and see how it goes.
Yeah, sometimes you just needed like a change of scenery too. I still, obviously like this name always comes up, Vadim Shipachyov. I can't believe Vegas. I mean, they didn't need him in the end. Or maybe they did. Maybe it would have put them over the top to win the cup in that first year. But I still wish I knew what he was capable of doing at the NHL. Like Gusev, remember, in the KHL was so good. So I know we don't have a huge sample to go on in the NHL, but Gusev, you were so pumped about him. Do you remember?
Of course. Like he led the KHL in scoring.
Yeah.
What do I need to hear? Like last year, Kirill Kaprizov led the KHL in scoring, and previously Panarin did. So obviously it's generally been a good track record of these guys coming over, the high end guys. So Gusev, I still have faith in, like, especially now if your league has NA spots, I think he's still NA, right? So you can just stash him.
Yeah, if you can get him in. I don't New Jersey and Florida are in the same, I can't remember if they're in the same division. Just like trying to figure out but he's been sitting long enough that he could just join a team, right?
Well, I don't know I thought the quarantine rules were only about going from Canada to the US. I thought in the US they're just chill. They're just like go wherever.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Haven't seen anything. That's what I need. We're at 3 minutes remaining, by the way.
Okay. Let's see. So Colorado had Brian, I'm gonna ask you this on the show also, but so this could be more just a preview. So now that Jonas Johansson had 2 good games, do you think that Dubnyk is the third stringer now, or do you think that Dubnyk is the second stringer? And also, does this question not matter because Grubauer will just play a ton?
Yeah, I think it just means that Francouz probably isn't going to be back.
Oh, for sure,
right?
That's the case. Yeah.
It just remember. So last year, Grubauer and Francouz both got injured, so they had Michael Hutchinson starting for them. And this year in the playoffs, Michael Hutchinson is like, he'd actually be a better third stringer than Jonas Johansson and Devin Dubnyk. So I feel like I think so. He's been doing well this year in Toronto.
Oh no, I will need to see a long stretch of Michael Hutchinson before I don't assume. Okay. I used to think of him as like my greatest example of bad goalie.
Let's say Michael Hutchinson and Devin Dubnyk and Jonas Johansson put up the exact same numbers over the course of 5 games, and they were good. Uh-huh. Who would you need the least time to get bought into, I guess is my question.
I think a different answer than you. My answer would be Dubnyk, I think, because he's actually been successful in the league before.
Well, my answer is I would need a lot of time to buy into any of them, but I might be with you on that. I don't hate Devin Dubnyk.
Oh, I assumed you did.
I just speak truth. He hasn't been good for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anyone will disagree with you there. That's for sure. Okay. Arpita, what are your thoughts on the Dallas goalie deployment when Bishop returns? So the Bishop news, by the way, in general is kind of weird because there was a tweet being like, he's going to skate with the taxi squad on Saturday, him and Sagan. And then like Saturday came and went and I didn't hear anything about him. And then like I just saw a tweet, I think I have it referenced in the show already, in the show notes.
You do
today. But it's like then it was a tweet like being like he's not close, like neither of them are even close.
I'm so tired of like injury reports just being, he's close, he's not close, he's close, he's not close. It doesn't tell me anything. Let's get more specific.
Tells you that they're not close.
Yeah, but like, but I mean, this one's especially weird because he was close and now he's not close. But like, what did close even mean in the first place?
Yeah, I don't know. And also, did he skate? Is there footage of this? Like they said that he was going to skate. But yeah, so the tweet
it sounded to me like he didn't skate.
I didn't see anything indicating that he did. That's for sure. Yeah, so Saad Youssef tweeted yesterday, Jason Dickinson and Joel Hanley are very close to returning. Tyler Seguin, Ben Bishop, Alex Radulov, and Yoel Kiviranta, not so much right now. So
and Radulov. So they're going. Like Dallas is fighting for a playoff spot without their 3 best players from last year's cup run.
Yeah, I mean,
or I guess Pavelski's in there.
Yeah, Dallas, and Seguin, I guess, is still in it. You're
Seguin
right.
was actually cold. So,
well, Seguin was injured.
3 of their should be best players.
Yeah, it's crazy.
The weird thing about the Dallas goalie situation is that Hudobin went back-to-back today.
They do that a lot. I feel like they don't care about back-to-backs. They're just like, play the goalie who's been doing well. Like Rick Bowness is just like, Hudobin had a good game, I'll give him another game. And then they're like, but Rick, he just played yesterday. He's like, I don't care. I don't pay attention to that. And I think it works.
So
I think it's maybe,
how do they swap? Like,
just like probably when one has had a bad game, then they switch to the next guy.
Yeah, because they still swap. Like, it's not like they're so married to one workhorse, right? And then that guy just gets all the starts, even if it's a back-to-back. Like, they go back and forth, but not on back-to-backs.
When I was a kid, I didn't know about this like back-to-back rule, right? Like this is like become like something I learned when I play fantasy. It's like the same goalie doesn't play back-to-back.
This is in the last 10 years.
Like it's like I wonder if it's like overrated to like, because on one hand, sure, they might be tired, but it's like, you know, they play them. It's still 24 hours. I don't know. Like obviously I'm not a professional goalie. Like I don't know how tiring it is, but like I assume if you rest all day, like maybe there's something to just like, I'm hot. Like I feel like I'm in the zone. I'm seeing the puck really well right now. My head's in the right spot. So maybe it makes sense that maybe Hudobin is just like, hey, I want to keep going. Like I'm crushing it right now.
So there has been like challenges made to the initial thinking, which was done by Eric Tulsky, who's now like with Carolina in an upper management position, like doing analytics and whatever. So first it was like, oh, this is so obvious. And then someone eventually pushed back and said, you know, I actually don't know that data was 100% right. And then there was another argument, which might've been, you know, tied up already in that first counter argument, which is like, I'll still take, because the first argument was never play your goalie twice in a row. And then it was like, well, you know, if there's a big enough gap between your goalie's skill levels that 80% of your number one goalie at 80% still beats your backup, then, you know, then you shouldn't just be switching on a back-to-back for no reason. But I still remember just being like blown away at the initial data that was released. It was like, oh, wow, how is one of those like big light bulb moments early on in like the analytics movement is just, oh, of course, like why has no one ever looked to see how a tired goalie plays? And now it's just like common thinking for all of us, even players too.
And I guess the thing though that we need to like, I guess keep in mind, maybe like the next step of this now is like, yeah, now we have like a generic model for how goalies quote unquote do on back-to-backs. But then we have to also keep in mind that these are like individual players, right? Like maybe certain goalies are good at it and other goalies need their rest, right? Like maybe Anton Hudobin is specifically the kind of player that likes to play a lot. Like he's, you know, got a great metabolism. I don't know. Like he just like, he rests up well. He sleeps. He has a really good deep sleep.
Digests his food really quickly. The fat just melts away. Like
his body is just taking care. Yeah. He plays. He has a huge meal. He naps for 15 hours. He has a 15-hour sleep. Then he's like, ready to go. Let's do it.
Why does Anton Hudobin have that accent?
He's Russian. Haven't you heard him talk? Remember last year in the playoffs when he was like, what was that funny quote he had?
I've heard Russian people talk. I just didn't.
We got them.
This is so cartoon character with it.
Hey, I got a lot of Russians in my life.
You do. You have a lot of Russian family.
And they all sound like cartoon characters.
I'd like you to play that back for a couple members of your Russian family and ask them how accurate they think it is. How do I sound?
No buzz.
No. Oh, wait.
Oh, you're not on the right microphone yet.
How about now?
Oh, the buzz is there.
Oh, no. No.
Oh, well. Let's just hopefully it's not coming through on your Audacity. Oh wait, actually now it's not. Oh, it's just a little bit. It's fainter. I don't even know. I think it's your fan, to be honest.
There's no Elon. My fan is not on.
Maybe it's like on like a. Anyways, let's just
There's
start.
nothing. Do you think I wouldn't know?
I don't know. Maybe it's like something like really close to the microphone. Yeah, that would make sense. I don't know.
I am really close. Look at how
I'm
close I
incredulous.
am.
Actually, now I can't hear it.
I think.
No, now I don't hear it. I don't hear it now.
All up.
People in the chat, Connie and Shams,
I think you tried to play like some grand conspiracy, and only a few people bought in, and the rest who didn't know were being honest.
All right, well, it sounds good now. Let's just get started. So, are you good to like start Audacity and everything, or do you need to like set up a bunch of stuff?
I'm good to go.
All right, so let's count down.
Yeah. Do you have I hope you thought of an opening line in all this time.
No.
Damn, that's really how you could have used the.
Well, I was having fun chatting with you. Well, you could help me come up with something. Hosted by two guys who would trade anything to get Erik Karlsson to something. All right, whatever. I'll just start.
Who aren't going anywhere at the trade deadline.
Yeah. Sounds good. Sometimes I just like to figure it out on this, like in the spot. I sometimes come up with something.
Good luck with that.
So ready to count down and start?
Oh, I never looked up wine tasting word.
Okay, 3, 2,
oh,
1.
Wait. Okay. Sorry. Now.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Record.
Recording.
Okay. Hope everyone enjoyed that whole craziness.
That extended pre-show.
Was that a good show? Maybe that could be the show.
Maybe that is the show.
That's the show. That's like Seinfeld.
That's the show.
That's the show. What's the show? That's it. That's the show. That's nothing. Exactly. Okay. Let's do it. Oh, okay. I'll make a reference to the schedule. I know what I'll say. Okay. Yeah. Yes! Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the longest running fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys who have a great podcasting schedule for the next couple of weeks. I'm your host, Dylan Dabrowski. With me, as always, the Pubov prognostication, the IPP MVP, the fantasy hockey robot himself, Brian Combe.
Hello, Elon. Hello, everybody, and welcome to what I imagine for many of you is your pre-playoff episode, or actually maybe the playoff episode of your fantasy hockey season. Oh, let me do that again. Hello, Elon. Hello, everybody, and welcome to what very well might be your first day of your fantasy hockey playoffs. Okay. Hello, Elon. Hello, everyone, and welcome to what very well might be the first day of your fantasy hockey playoffs. If you've made it this far and you're about to make your playoffs and go on a championship run, congratulations. If you're not there, still give yourself a pat on the back because you're listening to the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, even though your team's out of contention. And that's doing yourself a big favor to get ready to take another shot next year. We know it's really the hardcore fantasy hockey players who are still with us at this point of the year, and we appreciate all your ears still being with us, and we hope we can reward your time with some very, very useful fantasy info and advice and strategy tips.
Brian, you're delusional if you think people who are eliminated are listening to this right now. I think
they're the smartest people in the world.
Look, you're talking to 2 out of the listeners right now, but most of you are obviously ready for your playoffs because I think if you're a listener keeping Karlsson, that means you are set unless you're in a really tough league, like a couple or something. Then obviously it's hard, but then you're probably in some other leagues and you're doing well in at least one of them. And yeah, we've got a big show for you today. We've looked at the schedules of every single team for the next 3 weeks, which are the playoff weeks for the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League and probably a lot of other leagues. And we've ranked every single team from best schedule over the next 3 weeks to worst schedule over the next 3 weeks. And we are going to present our findings to you in this episode, counting down team by team, and we'll give some takes on those teams along the way. Before we get to all of that, of course, let's mention that we're presented by DobberHockey.com, proudly presented by this awesome website. I go there all the time. You might think I'm just saying that, but it's true. I go there every day. I read the articles, I read the daily ramblings, and Frozen Tools are the peak tools to use to prepare podcasts about fantasy hockey and to prepare for your leagues. So check it out, DobberHockey.com and Frozen Tools. But okay, Brian, so here's the plan. Like I said, we've got a full ranking of all of the teams. Here's how I ranked it. So I looked at their schedules for the next 3 weeks. obviously the number one thing is the most games, right? The most games, the better. If a team plays 4 games each week for the next 3 weeks, that's a team you probably want to get players from. Then to break ties, we're looking at like off day games or quiet day games. So obviously, if there's a busy Saturday, you're thinking of adding a player. There's no point adding a player on a day when your roster is already full. So we've counted the off day games. And then we're also just looking at like maybe if there's a real tie, we're going to look at teams that have a better schedule like sooner rather than later, because you could grab the player now, then drop them later on in the playoffs. We're trying to be like schedule sommeliers here. Okay. Like this is like my and Brian's opinion on who had the best schedules. And obviously people can debate as we go, but yeah, as we go down at the start, these are going to be teams where you want to maybe think of adding players from. And then as we get to the bottom, you're going to be getting to teams where you might be wanting to think of dropping players from if you have them on your rosters. I am excited.
Me too. And we have a delicious bouquet of players selected to talk about from the first team. So Elon, who in your opinion, as the schedule sommelier, has the very, very best schedule the rest of the season?
Okay, so I want to start in Vegas because they go 4-4-4. So 4 games in each of the next 3 weeks. Plus next week, they've got a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday schedule, a streamagami, all like quiet days where you're not going to have trouble getting these players into your lineup. By the way, we're totally stealing the stream schemes format, by the way. So I should mention that this is maybe somewhat motivated this episode by Dave Betton's stream scheme. You should definitely listen out. He focuses on each week and who has the best schedule. We're looking 3 weeks ahead. But yeah, Vegas, wow. And plus like the teams they're playing, right? Next week they get LA, Anaheim. Then in week 2, they get San Jose, Anaheim. Then week 3 is a little bit harder when you get to your finals, Colorado, Arizona. But anyway, yeah, this is a perfect situation because not only is this a team with a great schedule, but it's also a team that you probably have a lot of potential free agents out there that are in good spots on the team. Like Riley Smith, he's been quiet forever. He's been dropped in a few of my leagues, but he's still on the Karlsson and Marchessault line, scored a couple goals and had 5 shots in the 7-4 win over Arizona on Friday. Nothing today. By the way, so today on Sunday, when we're recording this, Vegas beat Arizona 1-0. And I think it was Thomas Nosek who scored the goal. So none of these players I'm going to mention were in on any of these. But yeah, Chandler Stevenson is out there in a lot of leagues, had 2 points versus Arizona. Hard not to like the potential of a guy playing on the top line and top power play with Stone and Pacioretty. So Brian, I feel like these are 2 guys that maybe they've been dropped and probably for good reason because they've been so quiet. But now if you just want to pick a player that's in a good spot and has a good schedule, I like them both. I actually added both on my couple team. So obviously I'm bought in. What do you think about them in general? And if you had to pick only one, who would it be?
Yeah, so Riley Smith is someone who has been just one of the biggest frustrations of the season for me. I drafted him in the Cupful for what I thought was great value, and I held him for way longer than he deserved to be held. Because Riley Smith's season this year, and it still does, it looked so similar to others where Smith is paced for 60 or more points. He had a 62-point pace last year with only 5 power play points. That's awesome. We love that kind of production. But this year, a 32-point pace, and nothing at all has changed. His deployment hasn't changed. Like his percentages, like for variance, are down a bit, but not so low, not to the point where I'd expect him to drop. Basically, to have his point pace for the full season cut in half from 60 to 30. And so it's just a big old shrug from me on what the heck is going on with Riley Smith's season. The only saving grace for me and Riley Smith is that when I did cut the cord, he still didn't do anything beyond that. He's consistently on a good line and at least a half decent power play unit. And yet he can't quite take advantage seemingly ever. So I am not even at all going, like, you can stream in Riley Smith for 1, maybe 2 games, but if you're planning to add a guy to your roster for a whole week, I honestly would prefer a couple other options. I'm going to have to get better at this. I honestly would prefer a couple other options on Vegas before Riley Smith, who are probably available in your format. One of them is Chandler Stevenson, whose ceiling is admittedly lower than Riley Smith's, and Stevenson also barely shoots. So he's a pretty boring guy to own. He's kind of like a William Karlsson light, which is saying something in itself, right? William Karlsson is a pass first kind of guy. You can't always expect that he's going to get a shot on goal, and the points sort of come here and there. Stevenson's deployment isn't even as good as William Karlsson, which is why I'm adding the light tag on. But hopefully from Stevenson, you can get, 1 or 2 shots every so often and points semi-regularly just by virtue of him playing with really great line mates at even strength. And then the other guys that I'm going to take, Elon, in a full week over Riley Smith, and you tell me if I'm wrong, and I wrote this before the game happened today where Vegas beat Arizona 1-0. Arizona, by the way, just 14 shots, barely testing Marc-Andre Fleury, where Aiden Hill stopped 28 of 29. So a nice little start for him. But Tomas Nosek, with a goal today, is now up to 13 points in his last 17 games. That's 6 goals and 7 assists. And I think it's sustainable-ish. Like, nobody on his line is shooting like crazy. They've just been good. So it's been Nosek and Alex Tuch and Keegan Colasar. And today I see that Nosek's assist came from Jonathan Marchessault. So I don't know if you can spot check that, Elon, and see if that line, like that was just an accident or that line's actually sticking. But I am into any of Alex Tuch, who probably isn't available because he's been having a really strong season, or Tomas Nosek, or even, I'm even going to go here, Elon, if you need D, how about Nicholas Hague with 6 points in his last 13 games? Basically, I'm advocating to take anybody other than Riley Smith from Vegas. But it's nice that Vegas is a team with such a great schedule, because there are a lot of these deep guys who don't have any name brand value. So you might still be able to find someone to plug into your roster and help you out over the next few weeks.
Yeah, so I guess like we're just looking at this a little differently. Like I'm definitely focused more like for a short-term ad. I guess I don't know why. I just like Riley Smith. Like I just feel like he's in the best spot. Like I would take Chandler Stevenson first as well, but I feel like I'll take the guy playing with Karlsson and Marchessault. So I think he has the best chance to get points over like a Thomas Nosek. But I understand you wanting to ride a hot streak.
You would think so. And I've thought that all season long. Also, for anyone curious, Riley Smith is the NHL player voted as the most similar looking to Elon. So maybe you guys have that sort of kindred
I didn't know this
connection. Yeah. But Riley Smith has been there all year. So let me ask you, how many times have you added Riley Smith, or how many games do you think he's spent on your roster?
Over a couple over different leagues I've added him. I know what you're saying, that because I haven't had him, I haven't known the pain yet. Yeah. I just say also, I'm looking at a guy with a track record of, like you said, he's been like a 60-point guy for the last couple of seasons. He's in the same spot for the most part. So I don't know. For me, this is a deep stream in a league where I'm trying to get 4 extra games as opposed to adding someone from another team where I'm only going to get 2 games from. I like Riley Smith. So, but you could recommend Thomas Nosek, and people will have to decide. It's very unlikely to be able to predict this well, since it's just 4-game sample. But I'm talking actually a 12-game sample, because they have a good schedule all through the playoffs.
Yeah, anything is definitely possible for Riley Smith game to game. And I tell myself this every single time I consider re-adding him again. But if you ask me to pick someone, even for 1 game or for 1 week, I would take Thomas Nosek at this point.
Okay. We've changed, Brian. You and I used to be flipped in how we look at players. But yeah, I like the track record. Anyways, we got 30 teams to go. So I guess we probably should move on.
Didn't you want to mention something about Nosek's line mate Keegan Colasar that I was trying to set you up for?
Sure. Oh, thank you, Brian. Yeah. So by the way, if you need peripherals, Keegan Colasar, who's getting some points lately, is also getting a lot of hits. So that's a good guy. My friend Dave H., he said, you should bring up Keegan Colasar. Yeah, so he's getting points lately. I don't know. It doesn't seem like sustainable to me just because it's the third line. Generally, when I'm playing fantasy and I'm trying to predict who's going to get me points, I like to go with a top 6 player. But lately, like you said, it's the Nosek, Colasar, Alex Tuch line that's been producing. And obviously get those hits from Colasar. All right, so the next best schedule is basically the same. Also 4, 4, and 4 in the next 3 weeks, but only 3 off-day games next week. So the San Jose Sharks are going to take a small hit behind Vegas because they play Saturday next week, which is a busy day, but also a really good schedule coming up. We'd already talked about them last week when we were trying to pump up Martin Jones and saying the Sharks have a good schedule for the playoffs. Yeah, they get Anaheim and Minnesota for next week. Then they're going to have some Vegas games and then some Colorado games. It's not going to be easy, but there are going to be a lot of games for the Sharks, and generally a good schedule aside from this coming Saturday. So with that, it's like, what's the recommendation? As far as forwards, I like Kevin Labanc. He's only 12% rostered on Yahoo, and he has 4 points in his last 4 games. And, he's getting good deployment. It's kind of the same as Riley Smith, except actually producing. He's on the top line and top power play with Couture and Evander Kane. So it seems like the perfect playoff ad. Like if you're in a deep league or even not such a deep league, if Kevin Labanc is available, why not just grab him and you'll get extra games out of him versus think of someone as we get to the end of this episode. So in 2 hours from now, when we talk about players on teams with bad schedules, think of, if I have that player, maybe I should be dropping this guy for Kevin Labanc. Even if I like that player a little bit better, Labanc's got a good schedule, it's in a good spot.
Yeah, and a lot of the times the question is, who would you prefer between 4 games of this guy versus 3 games of this guy? And our advice is usually do the math. find out their recent fantasy points per game rates over the last 14 or 30 is usually a good way to go, or full season. Multiply that by how many games they're going to play for your roster, and that's how you're going to find out who the best player is that you want. But Kevin Labanc should fit on a lot of rosters, especially with his deployment lately, and he's starting to make something of it, which is fantastic. I'll also throw out Rudolph's Balcers as another option, who I mentioned in exactly the same context a couple weeks back when I called Rudolph's Balcers as a Kevin Labanc light, and I stand by it. He's pacing for just 6 points fewer than Labanc on the season and takes about a half a shot per game less than Labanc too. But Balcers is on a run of 11 straight games with at least 2 shots. And he had a 5-shot game recently too, and that's nice category filling for someone who you can't be so sure he's going to be able to fill the goals or assist column, but at least he's going to get you a couple shots the way things are going. And he's playing with Timo Meier and Tomas Hertl at even strength too. So that's good news for Balcers. Of course, he doesn't have Labanc's power play deployment, which again is why he's the light version. He is I'm not going to harp on this, Stephen, whatever. And that's why he's the light version. But again, good schedule the rest of the season. So keep Rudolph's Balcers name in mind if Labanc is already taken, if you're in such a deep league, and compare him with some of the options we're going to be mentioning towards the end of the show.
Yeah, and then in nets, I guess we have to mention the Avalanche. And then in nets, I guess we have to mention that the Colorado Avalanche decided to take Devin Dubnyk off of San Jose's hands. So I guess that's it for that offseason signing. Didn't work out too well for the Sharks trying out Devin Dubnyk. So I guess that either means they're going to run Martin Jones really hard, or they're going to give a shot to like an Alexei Melnichuk, who's been brought up by some people. I remember when we had Will Nadeau on the show a little while, it was like, watch out for this Melnichuk guy if he ever gets a shot. Also, a player named Joseph Coronar backed up Jones yesterday and came in to make 7 saves after Jones was pulled in a bad game against LA. So I don't know, Brian, do you know anything about either of these goalies? They seem kind of similar. They both played overseas earlier in the year, and they both played like a handful of games with the Barracuda in the AHL this season. Any takes about like if either of them are worth looking at? Like I know last week we talked about Martin Jones. He's had like a couple bad games since we did that last show, and then a good game sandwich in between. I think that's what you could expect from Martin Jones moving forward. I think he's going to play a lot and sometimes be great and sometimes be terrible. That seems to be the pattern. But I know that some people would be excited about Melnichuk.
Yeah, I think Melnichuk might be the one to be a little more into. Remember that he played in the KHL for St. Petersburg Ska, who, you know the answer to this trivia question. What goalie has St. Petersburg Ska recently produced?
Shestyorkin.
Yeah, there you go. And don't forget Mikko Koskinen as well. So Alexei Melnichuk, coming from that pedigree, that Russian KHL pedigree, he had a .930 in 16 games in St. Petersburg in 2019-20. This season with Barracuda, an .882 in 9 games, which really isn't that much worse than Joseph Coronar's .898 in 8 games with the Barracuda. So honestly, I'm not expecting much from either. I think the Sharks are going to ask Martin Jones to be a workhorse. The question is just how many, like he's going to need some breaks, especially with San Jose's busy schedule. So we'll just see how often these guys can come in. I expect Jones still starts at least 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 6 or even 6 out of every 7 games for the Sharks. I think he'll start as many as his body can hold up for.
I mean, the thing is, like when you play 4 games every week, you have a lot of back-to-backs, right? That means one back-to-back each week. So I think if you're in a league deep enough where it's hard to hit your minimum goalie starts, then once we find out who the backup is, you should probably be able to expect 1 start a week from the backup just because of back-to-backs, I think. And then we'll also see, like if Melnichuk plays well and Jones is struggling, why not just go with the hot hand? The Sharks still technically have a shot at the playoffs. So something to watch. Who knows? Probably you're just not going to want to put too much faith in a Sharks goalie. So we've got 2 more teams that have 4 games in each of the next 3 weeks, which is always a good thing for you in fantasy. And those are the Montreal Canadiens and the Minnesota Wild, the 2 M teams. So things are not looking great for the Habs going into all of these games because Gallagher is out long-term. Carey Price is still out. He might be back next week. Jake Allen finally put up a stinker, letting in 5 goals on 25 shots in the 5-0 loss to the Jets on Saturday. Still, with all these games coming up, the Habs will score some goals. They hopefully won't get shut out in all of these games. And I'm sure there's someone out there for everyone, depending on how deep your league is. Like the Habs have like a really not stacked top line because they're not scoring a lot of goals, but like all potentially fantasy relevant players stacked throughout their top line. Like their lines in this game against the Jets were Suzuki with Toffoli and Corey Perry, then Danault, Tatar, and Kotkaniemi, and then Eric Stahl with Josh Anderson and Jonathan Drouin. And then on the power play, I mean, it's all the same names, I guess, except for Danault on the power plays spread out between PP1 and PP2. So I don't know. I feel like I like all 9 of these forwards I just mentioned, depending on how deep your league is. And that does include, I'm surprised to say Corey Perry. Like this guy is nothing. Like going into the season, I assumed that he was going to be a non-factor, but he scored 2 goals versus the Leafs earlier this week and is clearly the one benefiting from Gallagher's absence. He even saw a season high 20 minutes and 9 seconds of time on ice on Thursday versus the Jets. Then he only played 11 and a half minutes on Saturday, but that was due to a 10-minute misconduct that he took in the third period. So I don't know. There's a lot of halves that I mentioned there. So how about I'll just throw a generic question to you, Brian? Who would be your number 1 and number 9 hab to roster from these 9 forwards that I mentioned?
Oh my goodness. Well, you mentioned Corey Perry. I don't think that he's going to be my number 9, but he might have been a week ago, but I'm glad you brought up that he's on a bit of a roll lately. You know, he's not as mobile or like generally capable as Brendan Gallagher, who maybe he's starting to try to replace a little bit. But if Corey Perry can just haul his butt to the right spot on the ice and get open for a shot, maybe he could see a little uptick. And I really like that Perry in the game where he got that misconduct and played only 11 minutes, he still had 3 shots on goal. So good for Corey Perry there. One player who'd be tempted to rank 9th, but I'm not going to allow it because I think he is DUE. He's due, or I should say high in DUE, is Jonathan Drouin, who has just gotten stone cold lately. Just 1 point in his last 9 games after beginning the year with about a 56-point pace through 30 games played, which is very reasonable. Like that's about what we expect from most forwards in Montreal. And Drouin has just not been able to continue that lately. He's been on my roster. He's actually my Riley Smith of the moment in Good Cupful, where it's like everything looks set up for production, but it's just not coming. But what I do like for Drouin is that the shots are still coming reasonably well. He has no goals on his last 45 shots. He only has 2 goals on the year. So Drouin's pacing for 4 goals on the season. He's never been a big shooter, a scorer, but he should be in the neighborhood of 15 goals as an 82 game pace, but has been shooting 3% this year. But I do like I said, that he's had a couple 4-shot games not so long ago, and he's playing on the better power play, and Drouin has decent 5-on-5 line mates. So I think there's 2 possibilities for Drouin. He's either a sleeper or a snoozer, because he also seems to be losing minutes here and there. It's like walking that fine line between a sleeper and snoozer right now. So Jonathan Drouin, not my 1st or my 9th pick. I think my 1st pick is going to be, honestly, I'm tempted to say Tatar. With the way he's been playing, he seems the most reliable, but I am just going to go Tyler Toffoli, which I think is the obvious one. And then my number 9 is probably going to be Eric Stahl, even though he did score that power play goal in his first game with Montreal. I just don't expect a whole lot of production out of him. I guess Kotkaniemi could be the other possibility as my number 9, but there you go. You asked me to name my number 1 and 9, and I still somehow mentioned 7 of them. What about you?
I think I would have said Toffoli and Eric Stahl also. So I think that we ended up at the same answer. It is wild that Corey Perry ends up there. I guess Danault also isn't that exciting, not on the power play, but he's had some small runs of production recently. Okay, so next up, let's go to Minnesota. Like I said, the final team that has 4 games in each of the next 3 weeks. So unfortunately for Minnesota, Kevin Fiala was a late scratch on Saturday. He left during line rushes. So hopefully that means it's just a short-term thing, right? He went out there, I don't know, tweaked something didn't feel right. We don't know yet what's going to happen, but man, Kevin Fiala on such a roll, 11 points in his last 8 games, and Minnesota has such a great schedule. So what a shame, what a waste it would be to have held him through the ups and the downs just to not have him injured in your fantasy playoffs. So hopefully, fingers crossed, Kevin Fiala is okay. So then I feel like with him out, I feel like there's not any other wild forward to recommend aside from Kirill Kaprizov, or like not an obvious one, right? Like earlier in the year, we were looking at the Eriksson X and the Greenways. More recently, the Matt Zuccarello and Victor Rask were playing with Kaprizov, but they've been cold as well. Is there any, like, Brian, who's the number? I'm not going to ask you for a 1 and 9. Just give me, aside from Fiala and obviously Kirill Kaprizov, is there a forward? Because again, we've got a great schedule here. Is there a forward that you would add on Minnesota?
It sucks because Minnesota has this really fantastic schedule and no one is doing anything over the last 3 weeks. And if I made it 2 weeks, it would have been even more embarrassing for the Wild forwards. But I went to 3 just to be kind. So that's about 11 or 12 games. You've got Fiala with 11 points, Jared Spurgeon then with 9, Kirill Kaprizov with 9. Then Ryan Hartman is next. Former Nashville Predator Ryan Hartman with 7 points. And 3 of those came in a single game. And then you've got Ryan Suter. So 2 defensemen in the top 5, plus a bottom 6 forward in Ryan Hartman. And then Marcus Johansson with 6 points in 11 games. Then Carson Soucy with 5 points in 12 games. Then Nick Bjugstad with 4. So I'm keep going down. And I still have not mentioned Joel Eriksson Ek or Jordan Greenway, who each have 4 points in their last 12, or Victor Rask, who has 3 points in his last 12, or Matt Zuccarello, who has 2 points in his last 10. It is a scoring desert right now for Minnesota, and it's really, really awful because they do have this great schedule. They've had a good schedule for a couple of weeks now, and I'm holding Matt Zuccarello being like, hey, Matt, where are you? And I still keep waiting. So I think my approach with Zuccarello is similar to Drouin, where I just feel like this can't go on forever. This isn't the way it's supposed to be, and points are going to come. I just am definitely running out of patience for them. So if you're asking me which Minnesota forward you need to own over the next week to take advantage of their schedule, or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I would say you don't. You don't need to own any of them. Fiala and Kaprizov for now. But if you want to take a chance on someone, I'd still think that Zuccarello has the best bet to perform. Do you agree? Or are you going to tell me that Greenway or Eriksson Ek or maybe Zach Parise or Ryan Hartman have a better chance to put up numbers?
No, I think I'm going to agree with you. Like, I guess this is similar to my Riley Smith, right? Like, just give me the guy who's in a good spot. Like, just because he hasn't gotten points before doesn't mean he won't get points in the future, right? Generally, when we're trying to project, we're doing it based on like he's in a good spot. I don't know, he's a good player. Like Zuccarello went on a hot run. I do like the fact that he's shown us the capability this season of going on a hot run, playing with the exact same people, Kaprizov and Victor Rask. So yeah, if I'm going to take someone, give me Matt Zuccarello. And he's probably like, the nice thing is he's done so badly that he's probably dropped in a bunch of leagues. So you could try him out and see, take advantage of this good schedule, but obviously no guarantees because we've seen how cold he can be. One definite ad I won't even ask you about him is Jared Spurgeon. If he's available and you need D, or even if you don't need D, find room for him because he's finally taken a stranglehold of that top power play. And he was on a run of 6 points in 5 games before going pointless in his last couple. But if your league counts blocks, you didn't even mind that he was pointless on Saturday because he had 6 blocks versus St. Louis on Saturday. So in like 2 hours, at the end of the show, we'll talk about the Oilers and their terrible schedule coming up. And so, yeah, I feel like you have a tough decision to make. If you have like a Tyson Barrie and Spurgeon is out there, obviously you like Barrie better in general, like all things equal, but all things aren't equal. And Spurgeon's going to play like double the games over the next little while. I think I'd take Spurgeon playing double the games over Tyson Barrie, but obviously that would be a tough swap to make.
Yeah, and you've also got Darnell Nurse, who's another Edmonton defenseman that a lot of people might roster and not get a lot of games out of. So there's a lot of calculating to do. And Spurgeon looks pretty good. Only 3 shots in his last 5 games, which is not what we hope to see from him. But it is nice to see that finally, because Dumba wasn't even really producing regularly from the blue line on that Minnesota power play, which wasn't doing anything for so long, as we've harped on during the season. So it's nice to see that the power play is clicking and Spurgeon's getting in on it.
Okay, so next up, we've got teams finally not playing 4 times in all of your fantasy playoffs, but still a pretty good schedule for the New York Rangers, who've got 4 games in each of the next couple of weeks, and then 3 games in that final week. But also they've got some off-day games in these next couple of weeks. So if you're going to grab a Rangers streamer, they're probably going to get in games for you. The Rangers are actually playing today. The score is currently 2-2 with the Islanders going into the 3rd period. And I want to just check these lines quickly. So yeah, things are looking the same. Strome with Panarin and Colin Blackwell. Then I guess like Zibanejad with Kreider and Buchnevich. It looks like Zibanejad has also gotten Kravtsov on his line for a bit, but I want to focus on Colin Blackwell because I think all you have to say is that he's playing with Panarin and Strome, and that should almost be enough because these two have been amazing. We were, gushing over Ryan Strome last week and trying to debate if you want him over Tavares, which regardless of what our answer was, just the fact that we were having that discussion says all you need to know about Ryan Strome. But obviously that's all because of Panarin. So that brings us back to Blackwell, who has scored in 3 straight games going into today's games. He hasn't scored yet. We'll see if he can make that 4. And 6 goals in his last 7 games going into today. So, Brian, do you think Blackwell can hold this spot? But obviously it doesn't matter, right? You hold him until he gets bumped from this spot and then you let him go. But right now, I feel like he's worth rostering in a lot of leagues and he's available all over. He's playing with Panarin. He's scoring goals every game. It's kind of like another Connor Brown, who we'll get to in a little bit.
Yeah, kind of like another Connor Brown in that he's gone on runs and is on one right now. And this is not the first time that Colin Blackwell has been fantasy relevant. His last run, he had 4 goals on 14 shots over 6 games. This current run for Colin Blackwell, 6 goals in 7 games, as you mentioned, Elon. But on his last 13 shots, he scored 6 times. And obviously, that's not something that's going to hold up, even if you're playing with Artemi Panarin and Ryan Strome. So I'm not banking on this holding. His last run was slightly more sustainable and it came to a very abrupt halt. And I suggest that as soon as the points stop coming from Colin Blackwell this time around, that you don't get stuck waiting around and you just decide to cut ties as soon as you can, because I really don't think that the scoring we're seeing from Colin Blackwell is sustainable. Enjoy it while it lasts, but then please say goodbye.
Sure, but like even if it doesn't completely last, if he only scores 2 goals in a 4-game week, I'll still take that, right? Like I'll still be very happy to get 2 goals out of my streamer compared to a player that was only going to play like 3 times and probably wasn't going to score 2 goals. So obviously it depends on your situation. While he's with Panarin, I like him more than Zuccarello. I like him more than Jonathan Drouin.
Yeah, I don't, honestly. 2 goals, like I would say he's more likely to get assists than goals, and 2 goals in a 4-game week is a pretty tall order, right? A goal every other game is a lot to ask. And
I know. Well, you just said that he's not going to keep it up scoring a goal every game. So I'm just saying, like, yeah, if he does half that, I'll still be happy with it. You're saying even that's not sustainable.
Even that's asking a lot. He'll be lucky to do like a quarter, maybe 20% of it. So good. Yeah, he's not someone, honestly, even with his good schedule, Colin Blackwell is not someone I'm that interested in holding. By the way, you mentioned Vitaly Kravtsov. The 21-year-old has registered his first NHL point tonight, an assist. Congratulations, Vitaly.
Yeah, and that was with Zibanejad got the other assist. Like I mentioned, Zibanejad is playing with Kravtsov and Kreider right now. So that's
Did
a good
Kreider
spot.
score the goal?
No, a defenseman did. Brandon Smith.
A defenseman did. Not even a nameless defenseman.
Well, I'm just saying, like, like it's interesting when you see the forwards because then you learn about the line a little bit. But yeah, it was some random defenseman who's not going to score very often. So, Brian, are you saying you would prefer, like, because didn't you just say you like Thomas Nosek on Vegas? Yeah. You like Nosek more than Blackwell?
Yeah.
Oh, disagree. I'll take the guy playing with Panarin every day.
Do you want to do a bet rest of the season?
I don't know. Like, we don't need to do a bet because also it's like, I'm saying while Blackwell's playing with Panarin, like as soon as that changes, I wouldn't be interested in him anymore. And so I don't know. I can't predict the rest of the season. I'm just saying for right now, for next week, the Rangers play 4 times. And if I'm looking for someone to stream in, Blackwell is high on my list just because he's playing with Panarin and he's on a run.
Okay, cool.
I guess we've changed. Yeah, because I'm into lines. I don't know.
I'm also very much into lines. But
no, you're into recent production, except not if it comes on a low number of shots.
Yeah, but Blackwell was on a good line before when his streak fell off, and then he fell off the line too.
Yeah. All right. So anyways, yeah, these are obviously deep ads. Obviously, in general, you're happy if you have the high-end Rangers. If you've got your Zibanejads or your Panarins, then you're going to have a nice playoff run probably because you're going to be getting a lot of games out of those players. Let's go to New Jersey now. They also go 4-4-3, and they are also playing today. And, there's actually been a lot of Devils talk this past week on short shifts because they had the big trade acquiring Kyle Palmieri, who did finally score today, his first goal. Wait a minute, he's not on New Jersey anymore. Oh man, I gotta wait until we get to the Islanders before I talk about Kyle Palmieri. I got excited. Okay, so let's talk about New Jersey. They've been seeing a couple strong lines, even with these players out of the lineup, even with Zajac and Palmieri gone. They've been running Bratt, Zacha, and Wood, and then Hughes with Sharangovich and Kuokkanen. And I see that New Jersey did play today, so I did have that part right at least. And they had to go. Oh, so that line with Miles Wood assisted by Jesper Bratt. I thought I saw that Jesper Bratt got a point today. I wonder if that got taken back or something. If there was a goal canceled, I looked a little bit earlier. Anyway, those are a bunch of players that are all doing pretty well right now. Pavel Zacha is on a really nice run, 6 points in his last 4 games going into today. Jesper Bratt, we've talked about a lot. He's got 14 points his last 14 games going into today. Miles Wood, like I said, got another point today. Even Jack Hughes has started to wake up. He had 5 points in his last 4 games after he was cold forever. Kuokkanen and Sharangovich also over a point per game in their last handful of games. So I don't know. I don't really have a question here. Oh, plus Nico Hischier could be back soon. He was scheduled to potentially even come back today. It looks like that didn't happen. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really have a question. I guess we don't have to ask you something about every single team. Do you have any comments about the Devils, or we can move on?
Well, sure. Yeah, I'll comment just that Jesper Bratt is definitely rosterable. If you're on the fence about him, get off it and get him onto your roster. Jesper Bratt has been producing at a solid pace for a while now. And of course, now I do see him with an assist, Elon, tonight. So that would put him at 15 points in 15 games. I'm not expecting a point per game from him, but he's on a 60-point pace on the whole this season. And I think it's pretty sustainable. I don't see any reason to not believe that Jesper Bratt is a 55, 60-point player the rest of this season and hopefully in the next one too. So I would say if you're looking for a devil, you want Jesper Bratt or Jack Hughes right at the top. They're kind of in a tier of their own. And one interesting note about Jack Hughes is that his ice time has gone up lately. He was actually seeing 14 minutes a night. He had seen a pretty big dip in his ice about the third week of March. But over the last week or so, maybe 2 weeks, he's seeing 20 or more minutes a night. 4 out of 5 games going into tonight, he had seen 20 or more minutes. One of them he saw over 24 minutes. And the only one that he didn't see 20 minutes, he had 3 points in with 9, and he only played 16 seconds short of 20 minutes. So Jack Hughes right now, I assume, is just going to keep seeing plenty of minutes down the stretch as the Devils are really, I think, just looking to develop further for next season. And why not throw Jack Hughes a bunch of minutes and give him chances to score? So I'm most into those Devils. And then I'll go Sharangovich, Pavel Zacha, Kuokkanen, and Miles Wood. One guy we haven't named, Elon, is Andreas Johnson. What a bummer of a season for him. Yeah. 2 assists in his last 26 games. That's his season. He's been on the top power play the last couple games going into tonight and has had some opportunity to score all the way, but hasn't. So I guess good call by Toronto, cutting him loose. He doesn't have a whole lot to offer. He's like, Kasperi Kapanen went to Pittsburgh and did well, and Andreas Johnson was the worst case scenario.
Yeah, it's a shame for him. Yeah, I thought that he might have something left, but clearly not. Like, we're definitely into guys like Sharangovich and Kuokkanen over Andreas Johnson. I think the Devils are as well. So he's probably done with his fantasy relevance. That might be the last time we ever mentioned him on Keeping Karlsson, unless something changes. I'll mention PK Subban. He was having a really good, not really good, but he was having a decent season. Like, he was rostered by me in a couple of my leagues and I was enjoying the production, but he hasn't been getting in on any of the fun. Like, the Devils have been scoring a lot of goals lately, and Subban is pointless in 5, only 1 assist in his last 12. That's going into today. Of course, no points today so far. So I don't know what happened to PK Subban. Any sense, Brian? Like, is he someone, he's probably now dropped into all the leagues. He's available in all of the leagues that I used to have him in, including the Cupful Tier 1. Is he someone that I should consider adding at some point, or at this point, has he just forgotten what he was doing before and is not able to do it anymore? It's so weird to just see someone being somewhat productive and then totally fall off.
Well, the key is that you said Subban was only somewhat productive, right? Like, on the season, he hasn't been cold all year. It's been the last 15 games or so, but it still washes out to just a 31-point pace. Remember, he started really slow too and had a nice chunk in the middle. So Subban has been slow for longer than he's been hot this season. And that's one reason to not expect him to suddenly blow the doors off again. But he is still taking just over 2 shots per game, even while he's not scoring any points. That's a good sign. And the other reason why Subban might be struggling to put up points is that the Devils on the power play have been brutal over the last 2+ months. They have just 8 power play goals on 66 opportunities. So that means the Devils are converting at about a 12% success rate with the man advantage, which of course does not offer PK Subban a whole lot of chances to put up points in that situation. So there's hope that Subban can be better than the 30-point player the rest of the season, but I wouldn't put him above 40 points, which makes him fringe rosterable in a lot of formats.
Yeah, like, the Devils have a good schedule, and still I'm kind of over Subban at this point, which is too bad because I liked what he was doing. Okay, so Brian, we've still got a whole bunch of teams to get to, but why don't we take a quick break? So you're listening to Keeping Karlsson. We'll be back soon. All right, we are back, and we still have some more teams to go through, Brian, that have in the next 3 weeks, 2 of them with 4 games and 1 of them with 3 games. I put the Devils ahead because and the Rangers, they were like 4, 4, and 3. So like I said, I wanted to like front load as much as possible, but now we're getting to a team, the LA Kings, who go 4, 3, 4. So 4 games, then 3 games, then 4 games. But next week's is really nice because those 4 games are, again, just like, who did I say before? Colorado, was it? Who did I say that had Vegas. Next week special, because just like Vegas, it's a Monday, Wednesday, Friday slate, a Sunday slate of 4 games, which is what you always want to get a really good schedule next week. And the LA Kings, you know what? They've got a great schedule by the numbers, but next week might be tough because those 4 games are against Vegas twice and Colorado twice. So on one hand, I want to be like, yeah, grab those LA players to get games, but there's a good chance they could get shut out in one or two of those games. Obviously, you want to get into that first line if like Brown or Iafallo are out there. I think both scored a goal in the 4-2 win over the Sharks on Saturday. And then our next tier of guys, I guess, would be like your Jeff Carters and your Adrian Kempes. Kempe's been pretty quiet lately, still on the top power play. Carter wasn't doing much of anything, but his 1 goal, 1 assist on Saturday, give him 3 points in 3 games now, and a couple big 5 and 6 shot on goal games recently. If you had to pick one between Kempe and Jeff Carter, is there someone who interests you for a nice 4-game slate next week?
Yeah, can I say none of the above?
Sure.
If I had to choose one, I'd go Jeff Carter, who has 2 goals and 15 shots in his last 4 games, whereas Adrian Kempe, who we loved seeing those big shot games from him, we haven't seen one in over a month now. Kempe's last big shot game had him see 6 shots on net, and that was back on March 10th. Since then, Kempe has just 28 shots in 15 games. You could do the math. That's less than 2 shots per game, which is not what we sign up for when we add Adrian Kempe to our roster. So my true answer is I'd probably let both these guys be, but if you're in a deep enough league that one of them really is worth adding for their schedule, I would prefer Jeff Carter.
Okay, I think I agree with you. Yeah, you obviously can choose none of the above. You can just stream someone from another team. So I was just, curious if you're interested in any of these LA guys, and it looks like probably not, which is fine. Maybe you want a defenseman. And Brian, you were telling me about how you like Sean Walker recently. He's been putting a ton of pucks on net, 24 shots in his last 6 games, and he's also decent for hits and blocks. So yeah, if you need periffs, he's like, I've been really into Connor Murphy recently on Chicago. So it's like another version of Connor Murphy, it looks like.
Exactly. Yeah, if you were asking me which LA King, sorry. Yeah, that's a really good comparison. If I'm adding a King before Kempe and Carter, I'm adding Sean Walker. If his peripherals help me, it's strange. Usually these peripherals guys help you more in blocks than any other category, but that's actually Walker's least prolific category. He's got a lot of shots and a couple hits, and the blocks do come, but not so consistently, not every night. So I was looking at adding him for the cupful. So I did, and I'm like, oh, LA's playing Vegas a couple times. That's not good for scoring. So another reason not to go Kempe or Carter, but that might be good for their defenseman. And I noticed that Walker, it does not pick up a lot of peripherals in his games against Vegas so far this season. So put as much faith in those very small sample split stats about Sean Walker against Vegas this season as you like, but I wouldn't recommend actually thinking too hard on it. If you need peripherals, Sean Walker is a good bet with 4 games and someone who can slide into one of your defense slots.
Yeah, okay. And then another good schedule, another 4-3-4 is Colorado, who also have a streamagami next week going Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. So you might be interested in looking to see what Colorado free agents are available out there. You're not going to find Rantanen or Landeskog or McKinnon, but that second line is out there in a lot of leagues. Brian, actually last week in our Would You Rather episode, we debated Kadri versus Donskoi. Maybe that was just a total waste of time because that matchup between them has been pretty dull so far. In the 4 games this week, 1 assist for Kadri and no points for Donskoi. So you win. You edge me out, Brian, by picking Kadri for your 1 measly assist that he picked up. But still, now is another week coming. A good schedule, 4 games. If like Donskoi is out there, I don't know. I'm curious. Like Donskoi to me is like Kempe, and you weren't into Kempe, so I'd imagine you won't be into Donskoi. But he's someone who has had some big games, just like Kempe did earlier in the year. It's a good schedule. Donskoi's still on the top power play, as far as I know. So is he someone you'd be interested? I guess like you could also look at, like a Brandon Saad, but he's been super quiet, or Nichushkin. Like there are a bunch of sort of like lower level Colorado Avalanche players that are available in a lot of leagues. Obviously, your higher end leagues, maybe even like a Nazem Kadri is available because he's been cold. I'd imagine you'd take Kadri first, just like you said last week. But any thoughts on Donskoi? I'm just curious. Like Donskoi versus Kempe, is it like pretty much the same, or do you like Donskoi more?
I guess I'll take Donskoi by a smidge just because of him being on that top power play and Kempe stopped shooting, which was the whole reason to go add Kempe to your roster. So I'll go Donskoi, but that's not to say I like Donskoi this week any more than I did last week.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I like his schedule for next week, but yeah, it would be a swing. Right. And you're hoping that he could at least have all he needs is 1 game, like that hat trick that he had a couple of weeks ago. And all of a sudden it's worth it, even if he does nothing the rest of them.
All he needs is 1 hat trick. The same way Colin Blackwell just needs 2 goals every 4 games.
Yeah, it's possible. I think I'd be more expecting Blackwell to produce than Donskoi. So for keeping a total ranking, I have Blackwell pretty high compared to some of the other fringe guys we've brought up so far. I know you're mocking me and I'm taking it seriously, but that's just who I am. Then I guess now I'll talk about Devin Dubnyk, who got traded to the Avs. Though interestingly, today, because the Avs have a back-to-back, and they played Jonas Johansson, who just had another good game. Johansson, 24 saves on 25 shots. And he also had that good game against St. Louis on Friday, where he stopped 25 of 27. So now it's all of a sudden interesting where the Avs seem to have a backup that's doing okay, yet they've picked up another goal. On the other hand, probably still makes sense just because we saw what happened in the playoffs last year when both Grubauer and Francouz got injured, and then the Avs basically had to leave the playoffs because they had to depend on Michael Hutchinson, who in our pre-show you were saying you actually kind of like Michael Hutchinson compared to someone like a Devin Dubnyk. So anyway, I don't know, is there any fantasy relevance here? Because like Grubauer got blown up in a game recently. We'll see how he does tomorrow. I'd imagine Grubauer is going to get the majority of the starts. I don't even know who the backup is going to be now, and it probably doesn't matter. I'd hope for the Avalanche that they shouldn't have to depend on the backup, whoever it is, and it's just to rest Grubauer sometimes.
Well, Grubauer is certainly presenting as though he could use some rest. Grubauer is now 855 in his last 5 games played, but of course has won 4 of them anyway. So thanks, Colorado, for helping Philip Grubauer still pile up the wins with an 855 save percentage to show for it. And Grubauer has reason to be tired. He leads the league in games played, tied with Connor Hellebuck. And at this point, you wonder if Colorado really does need to start thinking about starting some other goalies just to get him some rest ahead of the playoffs. He's been working really hard, and I just wouldn't want him to run out of steam. I'm sure Colorado feels the same way right when the games start to really matter. So I feel like Colorado's getting themselves into a standings position where they can be pretty comfortable and start guys like Jonas Johansson and Devin Dubnyk and hope to still win. I mean, if you're winning with an 855 goalie behind you, then why not throw Devin Dubnyk in there too, as just somebody who can hold the fort while your goalie gets some rest and hopefully let the offense take the wheel and win some games, regardless of whatever goaltending you're provided with.
I mean, is it fair to call him, what was it, 850 something save percentage of his last? Like he had one game where he let in 7 goals on 18 shots. I think like the worst game I've ever seen in the history of the cupful. He had like -7 cupful points on that day. So that's a good reason maybe to not look at save percentage, maybe look at quality start percentage, which I know hasn't been good also. Yeah.
The game before that, he was an 840. The game before that, 964. The 2 games before that, 903 and 867. So no, it was not just that one game.
Yeah. But he's been above 850 for all those other games at the very least. But yeah, I totally hear you.
No, he hasn't. He had an 840 in one of them.
Oh,
he's had 3 out of 5 games where he's been 867 or lower.
Well, so then I agree with you. They should rest him. What do you think about my general take that maybe we should not look as much into save percentage and instead just focus more on the quality start percentage? Yeah. I like that one.
Me too.
I'm going to start next season. Let's just do quality start percentage as the first thing we say about goalies.
Okay. Well, Philip Grubauer, 66% quality start, but in his last 5, 40% quality start. How about that?
Yeah, definitely not what people are hoping for. Can you imagine if you had Grubauer and you were depending on him all year, and then this like game in the final week to get you into your playoffs, and then he drops this like terrible game and blows it up for you?
Then you say, thanks for getting me all the way to the doorstep, and I should have been able to take it the rest of the way.
Yeah, I think it's impossible though if you're in a categories league and then your goalie blows up like that. Yeah, I don't know. That's the hard part about fantasy. I guess you could say just play with no goalies, and then this kind of thing can't happen to you where someone could totally destroy you. Okay, so let's go next to Boston, another team that plays 4, 4, and 3 times. They had this big 5-game week this past week, and so a lot of people were falling over themselves to get their different Bruins in anticipation of the 5-game week. So far, like it hasn't worked out too well, right? People who rushed out to get Nick Ritchie, pointless in the 4 games. Today, Boston's losing 6-1 to Washington right now. And Craig Smith, Jake DeBrusk, and Charlie Coyle with the only points so far in this game. So that means Nick Ritchie pointless in all 5 so far. David Krejci pointless this week. Craig Smith is the one that if you reach out to get Eddie Bruin, you're hoping you got Craig Smith because he had 1 goal and 4 assists in 4 games, then another power play goal today. And he's actually been playing on the top line with Marchand and Bergeron a bit, with the Bruins trying to mix things up with Pastrnak on the second line. We'll obviously see how things shake out. Maybe Boston's still in the hunt for Taylor Hall by the time you listen to this. Maybe they'll have him or someone else at the trade deadline. But yeah, going into next week, the Bruins still have a good schedule. Are you into any of these guys still? Your Ritchies, Krejcis, or Craig Smith? If you streamed them in for this past week and they did nothing for you, do you hold on? Or is it like, I don't even care if they have a good schedule. I'm done with Nick Ritchie and David Krejci. Blech.
Well, you can't lump in the cheese with Craig Smith, right? Krejci and Ritchie, who did let you down. And unfortunately they did. But honestly, I think that was just a 1-week thing. I think you can look to next week. Krejci was great the week before. So I think he's probably capable of doing that any given week, not every given week, but any given week. And same goes for Nick Ritchie. But props to Craig Smith for really delivering last week. Smith is on a really nice run. He's the Smith I prefer between Craig and Riley. One and Mike even. Okay, sorry. I'll take that back because you're already on me about me never giving Mike Smith credit for the good he does. Craig Smith, 1 goal and 9 assists in his last 7 games. That's 10 points. And is averaging 2 shots per game. And we know Craig Smith is like this journeyman third wheel guy. You know how long I liked him in Nashville for, and every time, which was often, that he'd end up on the top line. It's like, yeah, why don't you try out Craig Smith? And it worked more often than not. And this year, it's finally working now that he's getting some good opportunity in Boston. I'm really happy to see him there and see him cashing in. I'm not surprised that Craig Smith is cashing in from the spot he's in. And I kind of hope it continues. Like Boston, we've talked about so many times how they might want to split up their top 2 lines, and then they never end up actually doing it because that top line is just so dominant that they don't need any other lines. But this time, this feels like one of the longest stretches the Bruins have gone without having Marchand, Bergeron, and Pasternak all together as a trio.
Yeah, so are you saying then for next week, if you had added Nick Ritchie, in one of my leagues, I added Nick Ritchie. I still have him. If Craig Smith is available, should I make that swap or should I just hold on to Ritchie? Ritchie's the one on the top power play.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think I would probably stick with Ritchie because of course, not all of what Craig Smith is doing is sustainable, but it would be close. I would stick with Ritchie though.
Okay, I think I agree. And then obviously the Bruins are struggling right now, partially because they're starting to lose all their defensemen, right? Charlie McAvoy has been injured. Apparently he might be back next week though. So hopefully that'll figure that out. Matt Grishlick sustained an upper body injury versus Philly on Saturday. Boston went with 5 forwards on the power play in Saturday's game. Actually, let's check and see on Frozen Tools what the power play has been today. No, so they've had Jack. Who's this? Jack Akan has been quarterbacking the top power play for the Bruins today. So I'd imagine that won't last because McAvoy is coming back soon. But yeah, it's been tough for them. Apparently, and Shams is saying, K-Townie in the chat here is saying that Zboril also got injured today. So the Bruins are having a tough time. Plus, both of their goalies are injured, right? Tuukka Rask, it has been out for a while, and Halak's on the COVID protocol. Jeremy Swayman came in and actually had 2 great games versus Philly and Washington. Then he had 3 goals against on 23 shots in the loss to Philly on Saturday. Today, Dan Vladar is playing, and he's been totally blown up. So now going into next week, I guess I'd imagine Tuukka Rask might come back. Until he is, Jeremy Swayman could be an interesting option, though at the same time, the Bruins have no defense and they just let in 6 goals. So what's your interest level on Jeremy Swayman? Like, Brian, actually in our joint league, the Fantasy Hockey Trades Invitational, where we went lossless the whole season through. We're going into the playoffs with a perfect record. So I'm very excited about that.
Lossless sounds way less impressive than undefeated.
Undefeated. Okay, let's say undefeated then. We're undefeated. We've got the bye. Hopefully we won't now blow it in the semifinals after winning every single regular season game. Anyways, we have room to add a goalie, and Swayman is out there, but so are some other, regular options that are always out there, like your Allmark, Martin Jones, Blackwood. Is just Swayman another guy the same as them, or does he go higher because he's on the Bruins and has that potential to be the starter on the Bruins if Rask ends up staying hurt longer?
Well, the latest on Tuukka Rask before we get too far on this is that he could play Tuesday or Thursday. So this is not necessarily a long-term look for Jeremy Swayman if you're adding him, although the Bruins, I don't think would mind having someone to trade off games with Tuukka Rask the same way that Halak was doing most of the season. If Swayman proves himself to be up to the task, then why wouldn't they use him as a Yarrow Halak? Heck, he's been better than Halak this year. As you mentioned, 929 over his 3 games so far this season, and playing in Providence of the AHL, his first taste of being a pro. The 22-year-old had a .933 save percentage, so his pro career is off to a very, very good start. And I would look to him if you're in a league where you don't need a ton of volume, but you'll be happy to take some rates. I'd find it very hard to believe that Swayman won't see at least 1 game a week and could see 2.
Okay, so yeah, someone definitely to look at. And also Tuukka Rask, he'll be back, but let's see how he does. And if he's fully healed, obviously you have to be a little nervous about a goalie who's been gone for so long. So definitely something to keep our eye on. Brian, by the way, PK Subban, we have a gift. We should sell this service. We call out a player who's cold and he starts to score. That's why I think Riley Smith is a good ad right now, because we brought him up on this show, which means he's about to go off. But yeah, PK Subban scored a goal, so good for him. All right, so another 4-4-3 team. Again, we're looking at schedules, and Buffalo Sabres play 4 times, and then 3 times. You might think, I don't care. I don't want any Buffalo Sabres players. No, thank you. Especially you'd think now they've traded Eric Stahl, they've traded Montour, Hall's going to be gone soon. And yet, with all the turmoil, first of all, Rasmus Dahlin is on a 4-game point streak going into today, which is like he was cold all season, and all it took was like all the players leaving, and then Dahlin finally got hot. He no points today though, unfortunately. Buffalo won again. Oh, look at Buffalo all of a sudden. They won 5-3 over Philly, so maybe it's not the toughest competition, but still, Linus Ullmark has a winning record on the season. Ullmark, like you would have thought, like now he came back. I think we even had this conversation, right, Brian, where you were like, should people grab Ullmark now that he's back from his injury? And you were like, well, yeah, he's going to put up good rates. We don't expect many wins. He's like winning more than he loses. Maybe that's more just a function of who he's been playing lately. But man, I'm very impressed with Linus Ullmark. Maybe he's our option in the fantasy hockey trades league. Anyways, so Dahlin is finally getting hot, and also here's a really deep cut. I definitely didn't expect to say this season, but Casey Middlestat, only 1% rostered on Yahoo, has 6 points in his last 6 games going into today, and he scored another goal today. So make that 7 points. Wow, Casey Middlestat out of nowhere producing. Is there any chance that the 2017 8th overall pick is finally breaking out for real and people should go grab him?
So some context to Casey Middlestat's goal today is that it was into an empty net, which is good. He was out on the ice in that situation, I guess being rewarded for his recent play, but it was not necessarily a skill goal. Middlestat now, well, going into tonight, had 5 goals on his last 11 shots. So kind of like a Colin Blackwell. Whereas, yeah, all these goals are kind of coming, and he's someone who we've seen glimpses from before, but it's really unsustainable, and I don't expect it to continue the way it has been. Like, you're asking me about Casey Middlestat. You might as well be asking me about his line mate, Rasmus Asplund, who has 5 points in his last 8 games, and I'm just checking the box score now. I don't think Asplund did get on the score sheet, but
no, he did. He scored a goal.
Oh, there you go. So I am as equally as into Middlestat as I am Rasmus Asplund.
Really?
Yeah.
Middlestat has the pedigree. He played more minutes today. Middlestat played 16 minutes and 12 seconds, and he got top power play. Rasmus Asplund didn't get any power play time.
Yeah. Okay, fine. So you caught me. I'm being a little cheeky, a little glib, and maybe thank you for clarifying.
Backfired, Brian.
You got me. But it's good to clarify. Yes, I like Middlestat more than Asplund, but I don't love either option. Elon, you might get mad at me for saying this, but I'm looking at the box score today.
Are you going to tell me that Linus Ullmark actually isn't that good?
No, I'm going to tell you that Jeff Skinner had a goal and an assist, and according to his coach, he was smiling and feeling good out there, and it was nice to see.
I'm not mad.
Okay,
if anything,
great.
Yeah, you'd expect Skinner should be doing better. He's on the top line. He's playing with Olofsson and Reinhardt. So I guess it's Skinner. Are we going to recommend? I mean, Buffalo has a good schedule. I hate to do this because every time we do it, people get mad at us because he does nothing.
I think we are in a place where we can, in good faith, recommend Jeff Skinner. He's up to 8 shots in his last 3 games, has 2 goals and a point in those 3 games, and is seeing 18 minutes for the first time. I'm just scrolling through his game log, seeing 18 minutes a night for the first time all season long. So he's in a place where maybe he can actually start to do a little something for the, you know what, I'm not even going to mention his contract. I feel bad for him. I don't, because he's making all that money. But it's like attached to him. Just go out, have some fun, score some points, maybe for people's fantasy teams. So Jeff Skinner, the one thing I would love more than him just playing with Olofsson and Reinhardt at even strength is for him to actually show up on the top power play, which means he would need to bump, I guess Middlestat is the only, because they're going 3 forwards, 2D. They've got Ristolainen and Dahlin playing on the top unit. So I guess I can't be too excited about Skinner until he's on the top power play, but maybe like a Galchenyuk type in the meantime. And then speaking of Rasmus Dahlin, I will mention going into tonight, he had just a single shot in 5 of his last 6 games. So even though the points are coming, I still don't see the full Rasmus Dahlin experience having returned. But what has returned is his teammates' ability to shoot the puck. They're scoring finally, which has not been the case this year. Dahlin's line mates have scored on 5% of their shots at 5-on-5 this year, which is very bad. Usually you would expect around 8 or 9%. And it seems overall, like the coaching change has had a positive effect on the team, right? They beat Philly today. Allmark's playing well. Sure, they're sending players at the door, but now it's just like, I feel like everyone in Buffalo is just taking a deep breath, and maybe no one's going to blow the doors off in terms of production, but there's at least some renewed ability to put up points. So Rasmus Dahlin is getting in on that. Hopefully Jeff Skinner can get in on that too. And Casey Middlestad, of course.
And Casey Middlestad, let's give him some. Yeah, I just assumed we've given up on Skinner, but you're right. Yeah, he's someone to look at. I guess if you've got Olofsson or Reinhardt out there, they get to play Boston next week to start the week. So, if they just let in 7 goals, maybe they're ripe for another blow up. Okay, now maybe a more exciting team also playing 4, 4, and 3, 10 games over the next 3 weeks. 2 of the weeks being 4-game weeks to Toronto Maple Leafs. And man, huge game for Auston Matthews on Saturday. He scored a hat trick, contributed an assist, catapulting to a huge lead in the Rocket Richard race. Matthews now has 31 goals in 38 games, well ahead of McDavid and Rantanen's 23. It's a 67 goal pace. So just an insane season for Auston Matthews. Really curious to see what his ADP will look like next season. Like I'd imagine in most leagues, McDavid goes first. So I'll bet you there will be quite a few leagues where Matthews gets drafted first. And then I'll be interested to see who goes second. Like Matthews versus McKinnon seems like a real coin flip to me at this point.
And Matthews versus Pasternak too, who would usually go before him.
Yeah, so Matthews just, he's already been awesome, and now he's taken another step forward. So good for him. Obviously, Mitch Marner also did well on his line, 4 points for him. And then the big beneficiary of being able to play with Matthews and Marner right now has been Alex Galchenyuk, who just brought up. He's now playing on a line with those guys. He picked up 2 assists on Saturday, along with 3 shots on goal. So Brian, the Leafs, play 4 games in each of the next 2 weeks. They have this great schedule. Alex Galchenyuk is playing with maybe 2 of the best players in the league right now. So I guess we have to recommend Alex Galchenyuk. Plus the Leafs play Monday, Tuesday next week. So you can even just take our advice from Monday, Tuesday and reassess from there. I don't see how you can leave him in free agency if you're holding like a New York Islanders player who doesn't even play till Thursday of next week.
Yeah, which is exactly what I did. I dropped Kyle Palmieri, who, by the way, has a power play goal tonight. I guess we'll get to that, for Alex Galchenyuk, and I'm not sad about it. I'll get 2 games early in the week, and then I can cut ties. Galchenyuk hasn't done much, but in the last little while, Galchenyuk has been doing stuff, of course, because the Toronto Maple Leafs fixed him, as we've seen in the article that's been tweeted about 1,000 times over the last 2 weeks. The Leafs found the key to unlocking the true Alex Galchenyuk, which is great. I don't even care. Like, great. I hope they truly did. Galchenyuk now has 10 shots in his last 4 games, 3 or more shots. In 3 of those last 4, he had none in the other one. But line 1, power play 2, great exposure to Matthews and Marner, and absolutely worth a stream for Monday and Tuesday. Like, that's just an easy way to get 2 games in the first 2 days. And then again, you can move on pretty quick if you're not liking what you're seeing.
Yeah, and then I guess long-term, the Leafs did acquire Nick Foligno today in a trade from Columbus. So maybe Nick Foligno will end up getting a shot on that top line. But, there's all this quarantine stuff going on. It's going to be a little while before Foligno gets in the lineup. So I guess focus on, Galchenyuk for now while he's in that good spot. And I don't know, my general take, I don't know if you disagree. Like, I kind of feel like Foligno would fit in well as like a bottom 6 guy on the Leafs. Yeah. Just like a minute muncher that like plays the tough minutes, I don't like defensively. So I wouldn't expect much from him, but obviously if he gets a shot to bump Galchenyuk and play with Matthews and Marner, then obviously that would be huge.
Yeah, I could see Foligno slotting in where like Alexander Barabanov is right now with Pierre Engvall and Wayne Simmons is a hard to play against line 3. That seems where Foligno could be used, although there is a shot. I mean, right now the lines are a little out of whack because Nylander is out, of course, but you've got Tavares and Hyman and Makayev. Why can I never say his name? You've got Tavares, Hyman, and Makayev, and maybe Foligno can even slot in there. But again, you're looking mid-6 at best for Nick Foligno, plus a long wait before he can actually join the team and play. So nothing to get overly excited about at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say mid-6 at best. I think top line with Matthews and Marner at best. It's possible. They've put a lot of people there, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. I don't think that Alex Galchenyuk is like so, just because they fixed him, I don't think he's like cemented there.
Okay,
at this point.
Fair.
But yeah, it's a long wait. Okay, so next up, another good schedule. We're still on teams that are playing 10 times with these next 2 weeks, 2 4-game weeks, and then 1 3-game week. Tampa Bay Lightning go 3, 4, and 4. So next week isn't the best schedule for Tampa, but if you hold on through that, you're getting a couple good weeks to end your playoffs if you don't get eliminated, of course. Unfortunately, things aren't looking that great in Tampa right now because Steven Stamkos was hurt in Thursday's 6-4 win over Columbus. He didn't play Saturday. Apparently, he'll get reevaluated soon. Like they're going back to Tampa. John Cooper said he's hoping that this isn't a long-term injury. I'm not sure what hoping means Like, hopefully when they say hoping, like obviously they're hoping that, right? So I feel like, I know a lot of people like to make fun. I think there was another quote that I posted once. Someone was hoping that a COVID test was going to be a false positive, and it did turn out to be a false positive. So whenever I read like hoping in one of these RotoWire, or I should say NBC Sports Edge updates, I assume it's like an educated hope. Like it's kind of like, from what we are expecting, we don't think it'll be a long-term injury, and they're just using the word hoping. So I don't know, maybe this is just me hoping because I have Stamkos in a couple of my leagues. Anyway, so the lines for the 3-0 win over Nashville on Saturday, because of course Tampa still was able to pull out a win even without Stamkos and Kucherov. So they were running Palat with Point and Anthony Cirelli, and then Coleman, Gourde, Gaudreau, Tyler Johnson with Killorn and Matthew Joseph. And then this guy, Ross Colton, wasn't even really on a line. He was like just jumping around a bit into those other lines. And you would think, well, whatever. So obviously of all these people I just mentioned, probably the least interesting is Ross Colton. But no, who TF is this guy? He scored in 5 of his last 6 games now. Another Connor Brown. He's like a Blackwell or a Connor Brown now. We haven't even talked about Connor Brown yet. Is there any chance this is for real and Ross Colton is someone people should consider grabbing at this point? Like, I have to at least bring him up, even though I know you're going to swat him away.
Well, I'm going to remind you that this is not the first time. I don't know if you remember. It's not the first time we've brought Ross Colton up on Keeping Karlsson. We brought him up a few weeks ago when we were talking about Carter Verhaeghe as being sort of the next in line from Jonathan Marchessault, as these 4th-line Tampa players who can suddenly show up in a top 6 and be really quality top 6 players, or at least complementary players, and add Ross Colton or we named him as someone to keep your eye on as the next guy who could somehow find his way there. I was not actually expecting to see any production from Colton since then. I'm not going to go very far with the way he's been producing. It's been a really lovely run, but 5 goals on his last 11 shots. That's exactly what Middlestat had going into today. And I feel even less interested in Colton than I do Middlestat. So really lovely, but don't expect it to last. And Colton's still just playing these, like you said, Elon, he's not even on a line. He's been under 10 minutes in 3 of his last 5 games, even though he's been scoring these goals.
Yeah, so obviously you could say it is possible that scoring these goals will increase his potential to get more minutes. Like maybe he's earning more time, but yeah, I'd wait for that to happen before getting too bought in. I would still add like an Anthony Cirelli or even a Yanni Gourde, even though they're colder, over a Ross Colton. I know some people don't agree with that and they would just go with the hot hand, but I would take the person on a more of a scoring line.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I would take Anthony Cirelli, who, by the way, just continues to confuse, right? Did you know it's possible to be in Tampa's top 6 and have a bad on-ice shooting percentage? Anthony Cirelli knows this because his on-ice shooting percentage in Tampa with high-end scorers is below 7% compared to where it's been in the previous years, in the 9 to 10% range for Cirelli. I don't know that Cirelli has even had a year before with more consistent quality opportunity than he has this year. And yet here we are, Cirelli's pointless in 9, just barely hanging on to a 50-point pace. I hope for more. I would definitely take him over Ross Colton, who Mason in the chat has mentioned is Lost Colton if you pick him up.
Oh, harsh. I know you like that, Brian.
Yeah.
I would say if you have Cirelli, you have my permission to maybe you could drop him for this coming week because Tampa has a bad schedule, and then just get ready to add him back for the final 2 weeks when Tampa has a better schedule. And I think, or someone else if you see a better option out there. But I don't think you need to hold Cirelli right now for a week schedule, especially if Stamkos is going to be out. And obviously now that I said that, watch him like go off. But I'd rather have, let me say, a Riley Smith for his 4 off day games rather than Anthony Cirelli for next week. Okay, let's go to now Dallas, another 10-game team in the next 3 weeks. They go 3, 4, and 4. Only 1 off day game in each of those 3 weeks. So that's why they're ranking lower in terms of all these 10-game teams. Still, Dallas is, I don't know. I'm curious to get your thoughts on Dallas right now because they have a top line that's just scorching, right? Jason Robertson, Rupe Hansen, Joe Pavelski they've been doing that. They listened to Keeping Karlsson. They were like, I know this Brian Comm doesn't have faith in us, so we're going to make him pay. And yeah, so they've been producing big time. Like Hintz, 6 points in his last 2 games. He has 30. Rupe Hintz has 30 points in 28 games. Like all the people who have held him, and like he kept on going day to day and not day to day, and like game time decisions. So I think we even recommended at one point that people should just drop him if it's like too annoying. But it's like that would have been a mistake, right? Because even if you just left him on your bench for those games that he didn't play, I think overall you're still happy to get those 30 points that he's produced if you've been able to get all of them throughout the season. Yeah, and then you've got like Pavelski. He's fine. Like he's really good, clearly. And then Jason Robertson, Brian. He's scored another 2 goals on Saturday in the 4-1 win over Florida, which brought him to 27 points in 34 games on the season for a 65-point pace. I've been thinking it's a runaway for Kirill Kaprizov to win the Calder, but I think he's got some competition, right? Like Kaprizov sits at 34 points in 40 games for a 70-point pace. Robertson has been closing this gap lately, right now at a 65-point pace, and he's played fewer games. How good is this Jason Robertson? Why is it every year there's a new player on Dallas for us to be like, who is this guy? How is he so good? I know he has a decent draft pedigree. He's reminding me now of like someone like a Fiala or Bjorkstrand from last year. I remember like going into the year, like I didn't expect much. Maybe they didn't start like so scorching. And then by this point of the season, every single game that Minnesota or Columbus played, you like knew that Fiala or Bjorkstrand were going to do something. And it feels that way now with Jason Robertson. So I'm curious to like, what's your take on him? Like if we have to project him for next year now, like what are we going to put? Are we just going to have to plop down 70?
Well, like Ross Colton, Elon, Jason Robertson is someone who made an appearance early on the show this season. We first mentioned Jason Robertson back on February 22nd when he had just about 10 NHL games to his name, including 3 from the previous season. He was still playing on the 4th line, but Robertson had gotten on a 5-game point streak, and he stayed on the 4th line for a little bit after we mentioned him, but then he got a bump up into the top 6 and has been, like you said, on fire ever since. Basically a point per game player since he was moved up to the top end of the depth chart on a nightly basis. Jason Robertson has 9 goals and 12 assists in his last 26 games, 2.5 shots per game. And get this, Elon, because you said how I discount and write off every Dallas Stars production, but it's because of that power play. I swear, it's just because of that power play. And I make that point every time, and I don't want to repeat myself too much about it. And thankfully, I don't need to when I talk about Jason Robertson, who only has 3 power play points. He's doing this all at even strength. And maybe his variance is a touch high, but it's not that high. Like maybe Jason Robertson isn't a 70-point player, but I think he's a 65-point player. And that's just this year. I'm really excited about how much more we might get to see from him in the years to come. And like you said, he's made himself unignorable in the Calder Trophy race. Jason Robertson is really making waves. In the Calder Trophy race, especially with the waves he's making lately. 7 goals on his last 32 shots over 10 games. It's not a totally insane shooting percentage. It's high, but it's not totally insane. And he has 32 shots over 10 games, which is fantastic. And unlike Rupe Hintz and Joe Pavelski, has not been overly reliant on that power play. Speaking of which, Rupe Hintz, congratulations. He's played 5 consecutive games now. So hopefully those days of going day to day are behind us. But he scored 16 power play points this season, which has helped pad his totals. And part of that is because while he's on the ice on the power play, Dallas has scored on a quarter of their shots. Yes, 1 out of every 4 power play shots with Rupe Hintz on the ice has beaten the goalie this season, which is great. I'm not taking anything away from Rupe Hintz. He's got 16 power play points. That's something to celebrate, but that's in 29 games, which would mean in a full season, he'd be pacing for something like 45 power play points, which is just not like, I don't need to tell you that's not sustainable. So he's having a great season. I hope you did hold on to him, but I also, Elon, you know how I'm going to end this. If he goes cold, and it's possible he goes cold, I wouldn't.
That's nuts.
I would hold Jason Robertson. I would commit to holding the rest of this season. Rupe Hintz, I would not commit to holding the rest of the season.
Okay, I want to distance myself from Brian's take here. Like, just because it's not sustainable, like he's over a point per game. We have this conversation all the time, right? Like when you see a player that's doing really well, you say it's not sustainable, then you assume, okay, that means he's not going to be good. But like, to me, I think of like, he could still like go down in that power play points per game by like quite a bit and still be like a 60, 65 point player, which is definitely worth rostering in most leagues. Right now, he's above a point per game. So there's a lot of room to fall.
Yeah, I don't think he'd be a 60, 65 point player. Like he has 2 even strength points in his last, 7 games.
Yeah, I guess to me also, you know me, like I'm even into these players who are not getting points lately if they're in a good spot. Right now, Hintz is playing on the top line in the top power play, so I'm not going to drop him.
Okay, I'm being extreme here. I'm saying I prefer Robertson to Hintz. Hintz is probably a season-long hold. I'm not saying drop him. I'm just saying if I were to commit I'm ready to commit to Jason Robertson like I've never committed to a Dallas Star before.
Okay, I am definitely with you there. And I'd say, yeah, even with that, only 3 games next week, then they're going to have those 2 4-game weeks. And that middle week, the semifinals, if your playoffs start next week, Detroit, 4 games against Detroit for Dallas. Not next week, but the week after. So you'd think that could be a recipe for a lot of goals. And that's, of course, Jonathan Bernier turns it on again, as I know Brian thinks he might be able to at some point. But we'll get to him in a little bit. Let's go now to Carolina. We've got 3 more teams here that go with 10 games, 3, 4, and 4 over these next 3 weeks. So let's start with Carolina. I'm curious, Brian, I guess just a quick take on Carolina. Jordan Staal is having this great season, right? And I feel like he's someone we talk about every year. He goes hot for a while, then he gets cold. He was super hot early. You correctly predicted that it wouldn't last. But after his goal versus Detroit on Saturday, he now has 3 goals in his last 3 games. Doesn't seem to be relinquishing that top power play spot. I'm very surprised. I would have thought like Martin Necas would have eventually taken that spot back, but so far, no. Necas has been fine, by the way. He had his goal and assist in each of his last couple of games. You can't complain too much. So he was cold for a while before these last couple of good games. But yeah, what do you think about Jordan Staal? Has he actually like gotten better, or has he just ridden like too much high variance? Because it's weird for him to be having one of his best seasons so late in his career after being such a steady 40, 45 point guy.
You just answered your own question, right? He's 32 years old. He's shooting 17% this season. That's not the only piece of variance going his way. That power play role is big for him. 11 power play points in 38 games actually gives him his second highest total of his career. And that's in half a season. His career high is 12 power play points in 79 games. So that's definitely helping Jordan Staal push up past being that 45, 50 point player that we've been so used to seeing him be. But I think like 55-ish points, so long as he's on the top power play, is not an unreasonable expectation. It's not that far below the current pace he's on at 63 points. Like I mentioned, his high shooting percentage at 17%. That's because a lot of his converting is happening on the power play. 5 of his 13 goals, which means it's forgivable for him to have a higher shooting percentage than usual because he's taking higher percentage shots. So way to go, Jordan Staal, for hitting a new level of fantasy relevance at age 32. I don't think he's become a much better player, but it's nice to see that he's found a role that he's flourishing in that for some reason he wasn't really put in for much of the last near decade with Carolina.
Yeah, I guess like Teravainen has been injured for all the year. So I'd imagine maybe Teravainen would be the one bumping Staal from that top power play if he was healthy. But hey, his loss, Stahl's gain, and you're enjoying him if you picked him up in fantasy. Like, he was hot at the start of the year, then eventually he got dropped, and probably a lot of people thought even if he gets hot again, I'm not going to grab him because I already saw what happened before. But if you grabbed him, you're probably happy to have him going into your fantasy playoffs. So then we have, oh, by the way, one quick thing about Dallas. I didn't bring it up. I think we talked about it in our like pre-show. This Tyler Seguin and Ben Bishop news is kind of like weird, right? Like there was news earlier in this week saying that both of these guys were going to skate with the taxi squad on Saturday, which made me think, wow, Seguin and Bishop may be back like really soon, like maybe even next week. But then I saw a tweet from Mike Haka yesterday, basically saying like Rick Boner said Anton Hudobin is in goal today versus the Panthers. Jason Sickinson and Joel Hanley are getting close. Yoel Kiviranta still in a boot. Radulov, Seguin, and Bishop not close yet. So not close yet for Radulov, Seguin, and Bishop. So, okay, I guess they're not close. So, joke's on me for thinking when I saw this message that they were going to be skating soon, that meant they were close. So it might still be a while for those guys. Just to wrap up the discussion on Dallas. Let's go to Florida now with another 10 games in their next 3 weeks. They've made a couple acquisitions recently. First of all, they got Brandon Montour from the Sabres for a 3rd-round pick. Montour's actually been on a bit of a run with the Sabres recently. 5 points his last 7 games. Brian, I'm sure you remember there was a time when Montour was still on Anaheim that we were talking about him as a potentially like valuable guy in fantasy, maybe the next up and coming big offensive contributor on the Ducks, who didn't seem like they had too much competition. Cam Fowler's still there, I guess, is the main power play defenseman on the team. Anyways, Montour's kind of gone quiet since he's gone to Buffalo, but like I said, hot recently. And meanwhile, like Keith Yandel has been on like not a run, the exact opposite of that. He's pointless in his last 5 games, even with all the power play time he eats up.
I'm gonna interrupt you before you ask the question. No.
So forget about Montour.
Yeah.
All right. And what about Yandel? Do you hold on to Yandel even though he's done nothing just because he gets all that power play time?
He's always been such a hard guy to hang on to when he's not putting up power play points because he really doesn't do much of anything else. At least like he once upon a time in his career, Keith Yandel was a shooter. He's not getting enough 5-on-5 time to be a shooter now, but he's still seeing a huge proportion of Florida's power play minutes. So yeah, I think you do just hold and wait for that power play to bounce back. Keep in mind, Barkov was out for a while and Ekblad's been out too. So I think there's adjustments happening in Florida. Barkov's back now, obviously, which is great. And that might have stunted Yandel's production for a short period of time. I think you just have to hold, unless you have some really great options in free agency to replace him with. I'd probably just hang on, since D are generally scarce at this time of year.
Yeah, who was the guy on LA? Oh yeah, Sean Walker. Maybe if you're in a league that's a multi-category league, maybe you do need to consider swapping a Yandel for Sean Walker, like knowing that you're losing probably assists and power play points, but you might be getting like shots, hits, and blocks. So maybe that trade-off is worth it.
What do you think of Subban versus Yandel?
I mean, I'm not that into Yandel. I don't know. It's tough, right? I guess. And
tell
me
a points answer and a categories answer.
I don't know. I guess it's hard for me. I know Subban just scored today, but I'm kind of getting over him. So I guess I'll still take Yandel, but the answer might be neither. I might want someone who's been a little more steady lately.
Yeah, by the way, sure. Yeah. Shams in the chat mentioned he dropped Shams in the chat mentioned that he dropped Keith Yandel for Braden McNabb and isn't feeling bad at all about it. And if you want at least 2 blocks a game and as many as 4 and a handful of hits, then Braden McNabb, another Vegas Golden Knight that you might be interested in.
Yeah, and I know that you poo-pooed it right away, but I'm just going to say, like, Brandon Montour has a lot more points than Keith Yandel over these past 7 games, but obviously that could just be a small sample size. I'll be interested to at least see how things play out over there. By the way, also on the Panthers, they just signed Nikita Gusev out of New Jersey for $1 million. So he's, I'd imagine, definitely worth watching to see if he can crack the top 6. Like, I don't think they signed him to be like a bottom 6er who will really play right. At least like not at first. I can imagine they'd want to give him a shot. Like right now it's been Mason Marchment playing on the top line with Barkov and Verhaeghe. And I know that Anthony Duclair might be back soon, but we already saw him getting bumped around. So I wonder if maybe that's like a nice slot for Gusev to potentially slide into for a shot to play with Barkov. That would be pretty sweet. So he's NA eligible, I believe, right now on Yahoo. So if you could just stash him in an NA spot and wait, I'd be interested to see what Gusev can do. I'm not going to go crazy about him like I used to, but I still think he has potential.
Kind of like where Galchenyuk was a couple weeks ago, where Galchenyuk was NA and rumored to be in line for that top line and even top power play deployment. And you could just have him in NA for a couple games and see where that goes. And I'd say the same for Gusev, who I don't think had a fair shake in New Jersey this season. Remember, Gusev was a really fantastic producer in the KHL. Then last year, Gusev co-led the Devils in scoring with Kyle Palmieri. He's on a 55-point pace, which for that New Jersey Devils team was pretty good. And this season just could not get on Lindy Ruff's good side. His deployment was all over the place, never had consistent opportunity to produce. And even when he had any opportunity at all, things were not going well for Nikita Gusev. His own shooting percentage was down below 5%, and his teammate shooting percentage with Gusev on the ice, 2% at 5-on-5, which is as low as it gets. Find me a player whose shooting percentage, even over 20 games, which is what Gusev played in New Jersey, whose on-ice shooting percentage at 5-on-5 is less than 2%. It's very rare. So Gusev now has a chance at a fresh start, and there is a spot next to Barkov, currently occupied by Mason Marchment, that Nikita Gusev could very well step into. Although another piece of that puzzle to keep an eye on is Anthony Duclair, who has been injured, but the latest update is that there's a chance he's back on Tuesday. So a couple shifting pieces there. Also, Duclair, who's had a really rough season in terms of shooting percentage and luck, he could be a really great pickup if he does land next to Barkov. So I just keep an eye on who gets to play with Barkov and Verhaeghe in the next couple games and say, I want him on my roster, at least for a short test run.
Yeah, so Florida plays 3 games next week, so maybe you're not so into them, but then 4 games and 4 games to end. So maybe right now, stash Gusev, stash Duclair if you have spots, and then you could maybe reactivate one of them onto your roster when Florida has those good schedules in the semis and the finals. Okay, so Detroit also goes 3-4-4 over these next 3 weeks. I'll just mention a name. We've already talked about him a bit, but like Adam Ernie keeps producing, right? He had another big week since we mentioned him last week. His point streak is now at 6 games after his goal in the 5-4 win over Carolina on Saturday. And by the way, Detroit beat Carolina 5-4. Who would have expected that? So Ernie, obviously, I don't know. He's on the top power play. So he's got, and he's producing now. So maybe he's someone to look at, though, with only 3 games next week. Maybe it's like, if he's still keeping it up, then maybe you add him for those 4-4 games to end the season. Then Brian, your guy, Jonathan Bernier, finally returned from his injury on Thursday, and things did not go well. He led in 7 goals on 32 shots in a 7-1 loss to Nashville. Can't believe they left him in the net. Do you know the backstory to that? Yeah. Why didn't they pull him?
No, I don't know. I was also just waiting for the mercy pull, especially having just come back from injury, and especially because there's rumors that he's on the trade market. I don't know what there was to gain from leaving him in for that touchdown.
Yeah. Anyways, and Thomas Greiss got the win on Saturday for the Wings, even though he led in 4 goals. Before that, he was on a nice run of 5 straight games with a decent save percentage, like over 917. Basically, Thomas Greiss saw how Blashill put in Calvin Pickard for a back-to-back when he could have played Greiss for one of those games. He was so insulted that he was like, okay, let me pick this up finally. And since then, Greiss has been good. So are we at a point now, assuming Bernier doesn't get traded, let's say, should we just assume we're looking at the Greiss-Bernier tandem we were expecting at the start of the season, essentially killing Bernier's fantasy value beyond a stream? Or do you think this is still going to be what was happening before, where Bernier is going to play a crap load for the rest of the way and Greiss will only get in on back-to-backs?
I mean, it is an assumption that Greiss will continue to be consistently playable and Bernier will be consistently awful just based on their recent games. Although, yeah, Greiss has been doing well for a little while now. Last couple of weeks, 929 in his last 6 games, and on a Detroit team that does rely pretty heavily on their goaltending. So yeah, I think Bernier has become a less interesting fantasy hold for me, and is no longer a 1 or 1A type player, and I think is likely to and I think it is safe to assume that he's in a timeshare until further notice, which, I mean, the trade deadline will be happening or will have happened by the time most people listen to this episode. So we'll have more information on what to expect from the Detroit Crease the rest of the year after that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Who knows? Maybe he'd go on another run, but for now, I'm not as interested in Bernier. I held him in my IR the whole time he was injured, and I was I'm glad I didn't activate him. Obviously, for the 7 goals against game, he's still in my IR now. I actually have a bye, Brian, for next week in the Cupful, so I could leave him there for a week and see what happens. By the way, shout out to Tom Crowhurst. You're the best. I needed Tom to beat Marcus from the Stat Attack in order for me to have the opportunity to earn that bye, and Tom came through. You're the best. Whatever you need, anytime, just message me and I'll help you out. But okay, not in terms of collusion, obviously. I mean, I'll send you a gift basket or something. Okay, so Brian, next up, so we're done with teams going 3-4-4. No response. Don't you want to also give kudos to Tom? He helped us out.
Way to go, Tom. You helped us.
I mean, we're friends, so doesn't it make you feel good when someone helps me out?
Your happiness is my happiness. So thanks, Tom.
Okay, so Anaheim also plays 10 games over this next 3 weeks, but I'm giving them, I don't know actually if this is better or worse. They go 4 times next week, but then only 2 times in the semis and then 4 times in the finals. So I don't know. Is that good? That's good for next week? Then obviously you're going to drop all your ducks for the following week. Regardless, there's not many ducks to consider anyways, but Rickard Rakell did return from his upper body injury on Friday. He had 5 shots in the 2-0 loss to Colorado. And then Anaheim played today. Colorado beat them 4-1, and I'm just loading it up now. And Rickard Rakell did not get any points and only 1 shot this time. So that's a bit of a bummer. And I don't know. So I guess he's a fringe guy to add. Then he's been playing on a line with Max Comtois. So he's a potentially guy to add because he's playing with Rakell, though I don't know even if Rakell is so especially exciting. But Anaheim does have a good schedule next week, 4 times, all on off day games, just like those other teams I mentioned before, against San Jose twice and then Vegas twice. So I don't know. Any interest in streaming in an Anaheim guy? If Rakell's out there, would you look at him? Or are you at a point where Anaheim, they barely score?
Well, Rakell is the same. It's so frustrating because he still is shooting and he still fails to score on so many of his shots. Just 1 goal in 11 games, and that's on his last 29 shots. And that was after we thought that he had finally taken the monkey off his back after having just 1 goal in his first 20 games. And this is a goal scorer. Rakell had 5 goals in 6 games on 22 shots. Okay, here we are. That thing we've been waiting for all season for the last 2 seasons, maybe even 3. Rakell's finally back on track, and then he goes dark again. So it's been a really frustrating season for Rakell and anybody holding him on their rosters. He's a good streamer. I'd take him over Kempe and Carter, for example. I'd take him over Riley Smith too, but it really is frustrating that time and time again, night in, night out, Rakell's taking shots and not scoring. And I still don't know if he's to blame or if his team is to blame. There's been rumors lately that he might be involved in some trade talk, but we'll leave the rumors to the rumor mongers. The only Anaheim Duck that I might be interested in, Elon, is one who I never expect to score a goal, and that's John Gibson, who since getting injured, and remember he's back and he's injured again. But since then, since the initial injury, John Gibson has 4 starts And he has a .955 save percentage in those starts, just 6 goals against on 134 shots, .971 exactly 3 times for John Gibson in his last 4 starts. Of course, he only won 2 of those games where he was in .971, and he lost another against Colorado on Friday night. But John Gibson is somebody who maybe took a nice little injury vacation and could be feeling better than he had been earlier this season. He's someone I have some renewed interest in.
Okay, yeah. Like on one hand, I could also point out that he like didn't have a good game today. Actually, he let in 4 goals on 33 shots, but it was against Colorado. And next week, Anaheim gets San Jose twice to start the week before 2 tough games against Vegas. So it's not like Aiden Hill had trouble with Vegas today, though he had a lot of trouble with Vegas in the last game. So I don't even know what point I'm making there. Yeah, Gibson, like if he's a goalie that's out there that he was dropped because he was so. Remember there was that whole stretch where he was letting in 3+ goals like every single game for like a month and a half. And so like I imagine he was dropped in a lot of leagues, and maybe he's still out there. So yeah, maybe at least for these couple games against San Jose. Then as far as Rickard Rakell goes, I'll just like conclude there by saying if you've got him on your roster, I guess you hold him because they've got Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday next week. But for those 2 games in the following week, he'd have to have quite the week this week for me to be interested in still holding him for that following week with a bad schedule. Okay, so now we're getting to teams that only play. Or okay, I guess no, we were on 11 times. Now we're on 10 times. And I guess, so I actually had put Anaheim at the top because of the 4 games. So this is the part where you have to decide what you like better, a 4-2-4, or now we're going to do a 4-3-3, a bunch of teams playing 4 times next week and then 3 times for the final 2 weeks. So maybe these are going to be teams where you're going to want the player for now, but not expect to hold them long term. Let's start in Winnipeg. They get Ottawa, Toronto, Edmonton next week, and then a week of all Toronto, and then a week of all Edmonton, and then ending with Montreal. The big news in Winnipeg is that Blake Wheeler is out indefinitely with a suspected concussion. So now the Jets have been having to manage without him, and they obviously did fine on Saturday versus Montreal. They won 5-0. They were running Scheifele, Connor, and Kopp, and then Stastny, Ehlers, and Dubois as the top 6. And the top power play had Stastny, Scheifele, Connor, Mason Appleton, and Josh Morrissey, because of course, like Ehlers and Dubois could never get a sniff of the top power play if the Winnipeg Jets have someone like Mason Appleton available up there. So I guess that's just something that happens on Winnipeg, and we should be used to this by now. The short shifts guys already brought up Andrew Kopp as a clear ad, and he had another goal and assist game on Saturday. Brian, I think we're at the point. Tell me if you agree or disagree. I would say Kopp is the 4th best Jets forward to roster. Like after you got Scheifele, Connor, and Ehlers, and after that, give me Kopp over like Dubois or Stastny, right?
I think so. That's where we're at. And Kopp sorry. I think that's exactly where we're at, Elon. And Pierre-Luc Dubois also just been so bad lately as the other potential. Like you would think that he would be your 4th best forward in Winnipeg, even above Paul Stastny. But no, he had a 2-goal game a few nights ago, but overall, just like barely even shooting the puck. He has 3 points, all goals in his last 8 games, but only has 7 shots in his last 6 games. So there's really no nice slice you can take of Pierre-Luc Dubois for pretty much his entire stay in Winnipeg outside of a couple multi-point games that he's put on the score sheet. Paul Stastny, I guess, would be the other candidate to be worth rostering more than Kopp, and he's doing okay. He's got 3 shots in each of his last 3 games, but again, nothing terribly exciting happening in the goals or assist columns, while Kopp is actually putting up some numbers. So for that reason, I will go Andrew Kopp. And sorry, I said some numbers, like he's not doing anything. He's putting up really great numbers. So Andrew Kopp, clearly the runaway, I would even say, 4th best forward to roster in Winnipeg, ahead of Pierre-Luc Dubois, ahead of Paul Stastny. Both, honestly, like it's clear, Elon, Pierre-Luc Dubois is a drop, right? No one should have him on their roster.
I mean, so the Jets play 4 times next week. They start the week Monday, Wednesday against Ottawa twice. So maybe I'll hold Dubois for 2 more games. And then, yeah, after that, if he still does nothing, then maybe he's a drop. And then definitely for 3 games in each of the final 2 weeks, definitely not someone you should like assume you're going to need to keep stuck to your roster once the schedule dries up. So I agree with you there. Let's go now to another 4-3-3 team, and that's Philadelphia. Brian, I guess since we brought up Jeff Skinner, then that means we're forced to also bring up the other player who we keep bringing up, and then he keeps disappointing us in Shane Gostisbehere. But we have to bring up Shane Gostisbehere again, because ever since he was waived, he's been really good. He scored a power play goal from the top power play on Saturday versus Boston. Philly did play today, I believe. So I guess we could bring, this like lost to Buffalo. And what did Gostisbehere do? He got a goal and an assist. So look at this guy. He's on fire. All he needed was the motivation of getting waived and not getting claimed. So now next week, Philly plays 4 times. I guess he's still a scratch risk. I want to say like now that he's hot, he probably won't get scratched. But I guess you never know with this with Alan Vigneault.
Yeah.
But Brian, like I don't know at this point. I don't have anything else to talk about on Philly anyways. I'm not going to be like, yeah, the Giroux, Voracek, Konechny line is doing well. Obviously, they're rostered in all leagues. So I guess I'm going to say people should probably go and craft Shane Gostisbehere. Don't get mad at me if he gets scratched, but he's looking really good. And Philly plays 4 times next week.
Yeah, Gostisbehere has now played 6 games in a row without being scratched. It's funny because he goes from being scratched and waived to playing 20 minutes a night and quarterbacking a top power play. So like nothing really computes here. Neither necessarily do Shane Gostisbehere's 3 goals in the last 4 games on 9 shots. It's great, but it's not going to continue that way. But it's really nice while it lasts. And you could probably do a lot worse for defense options on your roster at this point in the season. So definitely at least take a peek at Shane Gostisbehere. Elon, if you had to pick one player, I'll say rest of season, but you can change the time frame if you want. Who would you choose between Shane Gostisbehere and Jeff Skinner?
Gostisbehere.
Okay. Why?
That's
because
quick.
He's a defenseman?
No, like Jeff Skinner sucks.
Okay.
And like Gostisbehere's been good multiple times this year. Like I'll need to see a lot more from Jeff Skinner. But yeah, I guess it's possible it could go the other way. But also, yeah, defensemen are usually harder to find. I feel like there's a lot of guys out there that are similar to Skinner.
I am also with you. For as good as Skinner looked in this one game today on the top line with Olofsson and Reiner, we have no idea if he'll look good again and if this will last.
Ooh, and another reason why you'd want Gostisbehere is if your league has NA spots, then you get to play a little cheat code here where he's going sent to the taxi squad every single time that Philly has a day off. So you get to stash him and add a replacement for Gostisbehere when he doesn't play. So even when Philly has these 2-3 game weeks to end the season, maybe you hold on to him because you don't actually have to give up a roster spot when they're not playing. So that's a nice little loophole if you could take advantage of it. Okay, so now let's go to Calgary. So this is like, again, 2 the next 3 weeks are 3 games and 1 is 4 weeks, but now next week is 3. So it's going 3, 4, 3. We're going to have a few of those. Hopefully everyone's following what I'm talking. This makes sense, right? To you, Brian, when I'm explaining the strategy, when I say they're a 3-4-3 team, you know what I mean?
Yeah, they play 3 games in the next week, and then 4 games the week after, and 3 games the week after that.
Okay, so from now on, I'm just going to be saying 3-4-3 and not explaining it every single team. So, okay, Calgary Flames had some new lines versus Edmonton yesterday. The first time they played in a long time, and they seemed to work. The Flames won 5. Was it 5? I have here 5-2, but no, it was 5. Okay, let me say it. And it worked. And they seemed to have worked. The Flames shut out the Oilers, scored 5 goals, a 5-0 win. Who would have expected that? So here were the lines: Lindholm, Gaudreau, and Tkachuk. So Elias Lindholm was centering Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk. And then Monahan was centering Dubé and Mangiapane. Then they had Backlund with Lucic and Nordstrom. And, you know, you'd think that's not great for Sean Monahan, right? Getting split up from Gaudreau. But hey, he scored an even strength goal, as did Gaudreau, who had also been ice cold. So maybe being apart is better for them. Maybe they've been each other's worst problem. By the way, Brian, if you recall, Ben and Lewis talked about Gaudreau and Giordano and Markstrom on short shifts back on Tuesday because all of them were dropped in Cupful Tier 1 because like Calgary didn't play at all until Saturday. They had those games scheduled against the Canucks. And I was involved in all 3 of these drops and ads. I was the person who dropped Jacob Markstrom. I was totally frustrated with him. So of course, now he got a shutout. And I'm not regretting it, though. It's fine. Like, I knew what I was doing. I know that he's going to play a lot. And he's supposedly a good goalie, though he had been so cold for a while. So
He'd been really bad. Yeah.
So I'm not going to forget that, because what I also did is I had $17 of Fab left, and I bid it all to get Giordano and Gaudreau, and they both made it worth my while right away. They both scored a goal and had an assist on that game versus Edmonton on Saturday. So we'll see if that can continue. Also another 2-assist game for Mikael Backlund on Saturday, bringing him to 7 points his last 6 games. So I don't know. I guess we don't need to go into Gaudreau and like Giordano and those guys. We've talked about them all season long. Seems like they might go hot, might go cold. I'm interested to see how these new lines continue to look over the next few games. But let's talk about Backlund. Like I said, 7 points his last 6 games, sustainable or fleeting. Like it seems like he's been doing really well ever since the coaching change.
He has been, and he's a player that coaches love to love, right? Backlund is usually someone who doesn't lose minutes very often, although he did go down to about 15 minutes a night, but is back up to 18 and a half in his most recent game. And I can't say that it's all sustainable, right? He has he's been on a great run. We see Backlund go hot and cold the way he's done lately. I love that he had 9 shots in 2 games going into Saturday's matchup against Edmonton, where he had no shots but 2 assists. One thing to keep in mind about this game against Edmonton, Elon, is that Edmonton was pretty checked out, right? I don't think they were at their best. They didn't seem to be fully having their head in the game. Remember, it was a night that they were just supposed to be having this celebration of life for their ex-teammate Cole Cave, but because of postponements, they ended up having to actually play a hockey game after that service was held. And Connor McDavid had this quote about calling out the league, and maybe there was something to it. So I'm not going to get too bought into any of Calgary's great production. I know you want to as a new Gaudreau and Giordano owner, but I'm not going to get too hyped about it. Although I do hope that some of these Flames did get off the schneid, because they needed a really easy night to all of them be able to do something. So Mikael Backlund, honestly, he's like the Jordan Staal in Calgary, right? A lot of similarities there. You hold him when he's hot, you drop him when he's cold, and that's pretty much the end of it.
Yeah, I'll take that as well. Next week, by the way, Calgary plays 3 times. Interesting though, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. So you're getting 3 like slow days where you're gonna be able to fit them in your lineup. So someone like a Backlund or even like a Mangiapane, like it's not bad to grab a Flame, and then you could drop him for the weekend, which is always nice to pick up another player who's playing Saturday, then another player who's playing on Sunday. Okay, let's go to Pittsburgh now. Also a 3-4-3 team. Malkin is still out, but apparently he could be back soon. So that's obviously going to change things.
So hang on, I'm going to interrupt you. Where did you see that he could be back soon? Because I know he's out, like he skated for the first time on Wednesday, but I didn't see any indication that a return is imminent. Sometimes it happens this way, right? They skate and it's like, oh, suddenly they're back in the lineup. That's great. It's not the feeling I'm getting around Malkin.
All right, that's fair. Yeah. So the latest on NBC Sports Edge, Mike Sullivan said Malkin is making progress, which is encouraging, but still unclear when he will be available to return. And he skated for his first time on Wednesday. So you're right. So I take it back. Malkin will be back at some point. He's skating because he's planning to play. Might be not until the actual playoffs. Might not even make it to your fantasy playoffs. So what are you going to do? Let's assume he's not there. In the meantime, Ben and Lewis took care of anti-jinxing Brian Rust back into being productive, because they talked about how bad he'd been on the short shifts earlier this week, which led to a 2-goal, 1-assist outburst versus the Jet Devils on Friday. And it looks like Brian Rust had another great game today with another goal and an assist. So I guess that takes care of that. Ben had his hot take that he thought that maybe when Malkin comes back, he's going to bump Rust and not McCann from the top power play. So Rust heard that and decided, no, I'm going to hold my spot. I've been there for a while for good reason. So I don't know. There's not really much to talk about on Pittsburgh. I don't think that has been brought up recently. Like Mark Jankowski brought a 4-game point streak into today's game versus New Jersey. He had 6 points over his last 4 games. But Mark Jankowski, where's this guy?
Did he even play?
Did he not play?
I don't know. I'm not seeing him in this. I'm furiously checking. We both went to Frozen Tools, right, to see if he's on a. No, it looks like he was, I assume, scratched.
That's funny. Okay, well, I'm not hopefully he's injured, but like that would be really mean to scratch someone that's on a 4-game point streak. So anyways, I guess that answers that question of if you should go and consider Mark Jankowski. There's a rookie named Radim Zohorna who's been getting some points recently, but I think we can move on to the Arizona Coyotes, who are now, we're going 3-3-4. So even worse than 3-4-3. If you're adding a Coyote, or if you have a Coyote, you're going to have bad schedules for a couple of weeks before finally getting a good schedule in the finals. Though next week there are 2 off-day games, so that makes them better than some other of the 3-3-4 teams. So the Coyotes, first of all, another player who apparently listens to the show. This is a good joke. It's like a lame joke even that I've said like multiple times now. These players listen to the show, get mad. But anyways, Jacob Chychrun, we had a whole debate last week about Pietrangelo versus Chychrun, and we both picked Pietrangelo. And then Chychrun definitely made himself the clear better answer, at least last week. He went nuts. He had a hat trick versus Anaheim, then had 2 assists for 2 games in a row versus LA and the Ducks. So yeah, or the 2 games versus LA. So Jacob Chychrun is back hot, and maybe we made the wrong call there. It doesn't really matter because both of these guys are rostered in most of your leagues. Phil Kessel, maybe making you eat some crow. I remember I brought him up a couple of weeks ago. We did a show where we were looking at players and their Yahoo rostered percentage and trying to predict who's going to go up or down. Kessel was 28% at the time. I brought him up as one of my players I think will go up. You said you thought it looked about right. Since then, Kessel's been pretty good. 1 goal and 5 assists in his last 5 games. He had a 3-assist performance versus Vegas on Friday to buoy that. He actually now leads the team in points, which I didn't expect to happen. He has 32 points ahead of Connor.
Is that a credit to Kessel or a discredit to the Arizona Coyotes?
I've got to imagine it's a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B, right? So Garland has 31, Keller 30, Chychrun 29. So I don't know if Kessel's going to end as the leading scorer, but obviously his Yahoo percentage rostered has gone up. He's up to 44% now. Brian, if you had to pick now, do you think his play is going to lead his rostered percentage on Yahoo to go back to that 28% that you thought he'd land at?
Yeah.
Or do you think, yeah, okay.
I do.
What's the reason? Like, so what he's done recently, you're not really liking?
I don't have a great reason. I'm going to be honest. He's still just a couple. This is not the way that Phil Kessel has ever produced, right? When Phil Kessel produced, he puts up a lot of shots on goal, has a lot of power play opportunities. And by the way, those have come lately, but this is just, these aren't the, it's not, I have no other way to say this. This isn't the way Phil Kessel produces. He's scored on a quarter of his shots. It's been a nice run. The assists are a nice touch, 8 assists over his last 11 games, plus the 6 goals, so 14 points in 11 games for Phil Kessel. But I assume he's just going to go cold again the way he was before this streak, which was about an equal length. He had a 10-game cold spell. Before that, he had a 5-game run. For that, a 5-game cold spell. So I think Phil Kessel is just going to be off again, on again. Right now, he's on again. And I expect his percent roster to just yo-yo back and forth the rest of the way. I don't know if you have any interest in betting on this, Elon, but I would definitely bet that Phil Kessel will not lead the Arizona Coyotes in scoring by the end of the season.
I don't think I'd go 1-for-1 on that. I feel like I'd want some odds in my favor since there's a lot of good contenders there, but I think he has a chance. But yeah, I don't know. I think it'll be close.
I didn't say he has no chance. I would say I would bet that he won't.
Okay, I guess so would I if it was Kessel versus the field, because there is, like we said, Keller, Garland, and Chychrun all breathing down his throat. I guess we do have to mention Michael Bunting, who was mentioned on short shifts, but I guess we've mentioned because he scored another goal on Friday versus Vegas. So 5 goals in 6 games going into today, and Arizona got shut out. So make that 5 goals in 7 games. I don't know. It's another Ross Colton, but I guess a little better because he's been on a good line and on the top power play. So I guess Michael Bunting, we've got to at least better than Ross Colton. Is he someone on your radar, more than Kessel? Or would that be making you you don't hate Kessel that much, right?
No, and I don't hate Kessel at all, Elon. I'm just a realist when I know what to expect from. I should also mention Arizona's power play has been pretty strong lately too, which is another reason that Kessel's been doing well. I think they've scored on a quarter of their opportunities as a team over about the same run that Kessel's been on. So that's been one way he's collected points. Yeah, Michael Bunting. I have nothing to say about it. The short shifts guys covered him pretty well too. Ben was just like, yeah, we could talk about him, but we're not going to.
Which maybe isn't fair, right? He's playing with Garland and Schmaltz. He's on the top power play with Garland, Schmaltz, and I guess 2 defensemen, Goligoski and Chychrun. I don't know if that's the top power play, the second power play. They seem pretty even. So he's getting good deployment. He's been scoring lately. Obviously, the goals aren't going to keep up like this, but could be someone worth rostering. But again, also, like I said, Arizona doesn't have the best schedule.
Yeah, it's not fair to totally discount him. He had 19 points in 16 games with Tucson in the AHL this season. Last season, 49 points in 58 games with Tucson. The thing is that those were his 5th and 6th years in the AHL. So at this point, you're looking at a 25-year-old who's never gotten a sniff at the NHL and been with the same organization the whole time. And it's not like Arizona's been really hurting for opportunities to offer people to step up into their big league depth chart. So there's always a chance that we're going to see something brand new here, and I'm keeping my mind open to it, but I'm not taking the Bunting dive yet.
Okay, that's fair. I think it's pronounced Tucson, but regardless. Okay, so let's go down to St. Louis.
What
final.
Did I say? Tucson.
I think the C is silent.
It's like a soft C.
Yeah, Tucson.
Tucson.
Okay, so St. Louis is the last 3-3-4 team before we're going to get to teams with really not great schedules. St. Louis has Minnesota, Colorado, and Arizona next week. I'll be interested to see what they do. One player who's come to the team recently is Colton Parayko, who returned from his upper body injury on Monday after missing over a month. In 4 games so far, he hasn't been able to hit the score sheet. He had 2 shots and 5 blocks, at least, in the 3-2 win over Minnesota yesterday, but pointless in 4 games. And Parayko was on a half-point per game pace before getting hurt. Meanwhile, the much lower rostered on Yahoo, Vince Dunn, is on a great run at the moment. He had 3 assists on Saturday, now has 5 points in his last 3 games, 3-game point streak. For anyone that kept Parayko, stashed him, brought him back for the week, should we recommend that they look and see if Vince Dunn is available in free agency? And if yes, then make the swap, go for the guy getting more power play time and more offensive minutes. Parayko's good for blocks, but doesn't seem like the offense is there yet. I wonder if he's 100%.
Oh yeah, well the offense is never really there for Colton Parayko.
He was on a good run. At the start of the year, he was half point per game, which is good for a defenseman.
Yeah, for sure. But I don't think it was ever supposed to quite sustain with the way that he's played. It would be 40 points with peripherals is what we hope from Parayko, and from Vince Dunn. we hope for power play points every so often. So he got one in his last game on Saturday night, and he had even strength points the 2 nights before to go with 8 shots on goal. So those are all reasons to look at Vince Dunn, especially if you're not that into Colton Parayko's peripherals. While we're in St. Louis, though, I do just want to also mention that Torrey Krug is alive and well. Remember, there was that rough patch where he was pointless in, what was it, 6 or 7? This was back in mid-March, and he had lost some power play time to Vince Dunn. And now he is trucking along just fine. 3 power play points in his last 7 games. And overall, he has 6 points in his last 8. So anybody who was patient with Torrey Krug, I hope you were, but he's doing just fine. Although, unfortunately, he's still not shooting quite as much as he did when he was with Boston. But I guess that comes with a change of scenery.
Yeah. So expect fewer shots, but still it's nice to see the points coming, which is obviously the main thing. Okay. Next up, we go to Vancouver, who, haven't played in a while, and they are only going to play 2 times next week, but it's good news, right? I guess I assume, hopefully this means the players are healthy and like ready to go and play at an elite level, which must mean they're okay. So I'm going to trust the league on this, which I know is maybe a mistake, but regardless, it's not my decision anyway. So whatever, but they're scheduled to be back next Friday, and they're going to play 2 times next week on Friday and Saturday. Then they go 4 games each week for the remainder, right? For the next 2 games of your playoffs, which makes sense because they have a lot of games that needed to be rescheduled. So if you have a Canuck and you could hold on till Friday, you're going to be getting a lot of games starting there to the end of the year. And a lot of Canucks have been dropped in a bunch of my leagues. I've seen Besser, I've seen JT Miller in a couple of my FA pools. So maybe you're going to play a game of chicken with your competitors in your league of like, can I wait till Tuesday to grab them? Can I wait till Wednesday to grab them? Because these are guys you're probably going to want on your roster, like, for when they start playing again. Obviously, they're not doing anything for you until Friday. So I don't know. I don't really know what advice to give. Just if you could get like a marquee guy like that, then try to get him. Of course, if you're eliminated at that point because you lose in your quarterfinals because you didn't get any games, obviously they won't help you.
Yeah, exactly. I'm stuck with Besser on my roster, and I'm back and forth between deciding whether I'm going to wait for his 2 games late in the week or if I'm going to cut ties and try and add another couple games between now and then. Of course, I'm in the cupful with Besser, which means that there are teams on bye weeks who could snap him up essentially no cost. So that's the reason that I wouldn't drop him. If I knew every team had something to play for this week, I'd be a little readier to drop him and then play that game of chicken that you mentioned. I guess for anybody whose leagues go full season, I might just say be wary of how long and condensed the road to the Canucks finishing the season is. I saw a tweet talking about how many games Montreal had played in the last however many nights and how tired they looked most recently, and how Vancouver's schedule is, I won't say twice as intense, but it's even more intense than what Montreal was going through. So just something to keep in mind with your Vancouver players. It's a really weird situation where they're all getting over this, I'll say life-threatening virus that seemed to do some real damage to their bodies and health and well-being. And they're just going to get right back into it with a back-to-back and then basically not stop playing hockey at least every other night for a month. It just doesn't sound like a pretty situation, and I wouldn't want to be relying too heavily on any of these guys for production. Honestly, I just hope they can come back on the ice, be well, and be a reasonably good version of their hockey selves.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a good point. Also, Serfanti's saying in the chat here that he'd be even maybe a little surprised if they play that Friday game, right? Like, it's one thing for them to schedule, it's another thing for them to actually be ready to do and for everyone to not test positive and all of that. So I guess we'll see. Yeah. So I think you're making a good point to maybe not rely too much on these Canucks. Maybe you can just let Brock Besser go, because even if he does play, he might not be at his best, or his teammates might not be at their best. So it's a tough situation for you, Brian, because you're like worried about him getting taken by one of the teams with a bye, but you could lose next week and then you're just eliminated, and it doesn't matter who got Brock Besser. I think you'd rather just make it through and then hope that the rest of your players can do something. So it's a tough situation for sure. Okay, so now we've got the Washington Capitals. They've got a good schedule next week, playing 4 times. Then after that, only 2, and then 3. And that 2 games in the semifinals are like late in the week. So probably you're going to be considering dropping a lot of Capitals after this next week. But with that in mind, I don't know. There's generally not too much, right? There's like Verana, who we've brought up recently, who got a point today on the power play. So that's good from the second power play.
Who didn't get a point in Washington today?
Yeah, that's fair. So maybe we shouldn't put too much stock in a game where they scored 8 points. I guess who should I ask you about? I'll ask about Justin Schultz. He's a guy who generally you're not expecting much from, but he had a good game recently, a goal and 2 assists in the 4-3 win over Buffalo on Friday. And he must have gotten some points in this big win over the Bruins today. I'm bringing it up now, and I'm seeing Justin Schultz with only an assist So there you go. Anyway, have you changed your mind? Like, I feel like at this point, Justin Schultz seems like someone I'd probably want rostered in a lot of money. He has 7 points in his last 10 games. Now we're making 8 points in his last 11 games. If he was a free agent in your couple division going into next week, is he someone you'd consider, or would you be like, nah, I don't have faith in Justin Schultz?
No, I changed my answer on Justin Schultz the last time you brought him up. Which
was you
when
did?
He was,
I forgot.
Oh, okay. Well, then I guess this question is moot. Yeah, you brought him up back when he was on that little run, like second week of March, and it was showing some, like things were looking good for Justin Schultz. And I said, yeah, I would be okay to roll with him while things are going well. And actually, this has been a really good season for Justin Schultz. He's got some of the best 5-on-5 production of his career, and there's no crazy variance underpinning it. I think he's just more involved in the offense. Like his on-ice shooting percentage is high, but he's on a 47-point pace. And even if I think you chose to regress some of the variance that you might say is too much, like more than he deserves, you might still land at about 40 points, which is better than he's been for the last for most of the last few years. So yeah, I would for sure take Justin Schultz for a spin as an option for offense from my defense. Of course, that's all you're getting, right? You get maybe a hit here, a block there, but there's no peripherals of value that come with any kind of regularity from Justin Schultz.
Yeah, exactly. I guess like he's on a new team, right? So I guess we'll start from this year moving forward. Maybe we don't have to think so much about those years in Pittsburgh where clearly at times, they weren't so into him. And it seems like he's pretty good, but obviously not gangbusters, but like could be a solid like half point per game defenseman. So I guess I'm watching when I said there's nothing, like I meant of like fantasy relevance in terms of like obviously TJ Oshie had a huge game today and he's on a great run, 4-game point streak. I guess Lars Eller had 2 goals. He's always been someone who like I look at when I see him in free agency for like a short stream. Like he's the perfect guy to add for a 4-game week that you're going to drop when he has 2 games the next week. So someone to consider a good goal today.
Yeah, I was kicking myself for not mentioning Lars Eller on the last show when he had been coming back from injury. And I think a lot of people had just forgotten about him, and Washington had a pretty good schedule at the time. Now they're at the end of this episode, so clearly they don't have a great schedule the rest of the way. But like you said, always a good shot for like a 1-game stream is Lars Eller.
Yeah, he's like my Frank Vetrano, I guess. Like, he's always out there. Stream him in. He has a decent chance to get a point, but not going to be worth holding. So Columbus goes 3, 4, then 2. So not great next week. Good semifinals if you want to grab a Columbus guy. They right now are in some trouble, though. Zach Werenski out for the season and David Savard traded to Tampa, so might be tough sledding for their goalies moving forward. This has opened up a couple spots. Michael Del Zotto is playing on the top pairing with Seth Jones, and Mikko Lehtinen, who had some hype going into the season for the Leafs and was subsequently traded to Columbus. He got on the top, or the second power play, I should say, for Columbus, so he's getting some time. I don't know. Neither of those guys too interesting to me. Are you interested in any defenseman not named Seth Jones on Columbus moving forward?
No, we've looked for value here, and I'm not sure there is any. We'll see. I don't know. The Blue Jackets as a team seem to be changing pretty rapidly. Really interesting, actually. Riley Nash and David Savard and Nick Foligno all out the door now, and those are all very John Tortorella types, right? Who have really been the type of player who plays the Tortorella system and buys in. And I really just wonder if this is all the start of things to come, and that thing to come would be John Tortorella being done in Columbus. It hasn't been a good year, and to see a lot of Torts types guys on their way out, it definitely makes you think.
Yeah, definitely. And now he's forced to play the non-torts types guys. And that's actually been good for like Max Domi, who much like Rasmus Dahlin has done nothing all year. But now as like the season's basically over and they're in sell mode, he's hot. He's got 6 points in his last 6 games. Domi's playing on the top line with Bjorkstrand and Line. He's also on one of those evenly distributed power plays lately. Obviously the lines change all the time, so you don't want to read too much into it, but like as players go out, I guess that just leads to Domi potentially getting more and more ice time. So at this late stage in the season, Brian, is it finally time that people should consider Domi, maybe if not for next week, then for those 4 games in the semifinals?
I haven't seen this more and more ice time thing happen yet for Max Domi. I mean, yeah, he's playing.
I'm assuming like if Foligno's gone, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I still don't even know if that changes anything for him. 15 and a half, 16 minutes a night, which sure, that's been the high water mark for him for most of the season. He seems to be somewhere in the 12 to 14 minute range most nights. I think as long as Tortorella is the coach, I don't know that means. I don't know. I have a lot of questions about Columbus the rest of the way. Like, will there be someone who emerges on defense scoring? And will the team be able to loosen up and play a different style because Tortorella's personnel is gone? So does he just change the way he's been trying to build this team, which could also be good news for really anybody in Columbus, including Patrick Laine. I don't know, Max Domi after 3 games, I'm not any more into him now than I was a week or two ago, but I take your point that with things changing in Columbus, maybe he is someone who can benefit.
Yeah, I don't know. 6 points his last 6 games. I feel like I like him more now than I did a week ago. I will say, but I'm not saying like I'm going gaga over him, but he's been added to my watch list when for a while he was like someone I didn't even consider. And now like he's doing stuff. He's on
He
the top
does seem
line.
to be playing center for the first time again since like late January or early February. He went a long stretch where I think he was playing on the wing. And so maybe that is working well for him. Actually, his days at center in Columbus were slightly more productive than his days on the wing. So maybe that's something to look for. Good
All right.
catch, Elon.
Yeah, I'd say don't add him now, but look at him for maybe the semifinals if he keeps producing. Okay, the Islanders. Okay, now we're down to teams that play 3-3-3, which is going to be the worst you're going to get, except for Edmonton, who we'll get to at the end. So the Islanders are the first 3-3-3 team I'll bring up. So not an exciting schedule in any of the weeks in the playoffs. You're pretty much only rostering Islanders if you like the players and not because you're excited about a schedule for them. Obviously, Kyle Palmieri, we've talked about a lot over this past week since he got traded there. Today, he was playing on a line with Peugeot and Wallstrom, and he was on a power play where they scored a power play goal. So that's nice for Palmieri. And he's the kind of guy I'd expect this, right? I don't think he's great. I don't think it's like an improvement for him. I think Lewis said the same thing. It's like a side thing. Like he'll probably continue to be like a, I don't know, half point per game guy, I'd say, for the rest of the year. Might get a power play goal every now and then. That's my take on him. Nice to see him get a power play goal today. It was on a power play, not with Matt Barzal, though it did get the most time. His unit with Bailey, Nelson, Wallstrom, and Leddy. So I don't know. I'm not too excited about Palmieri, especially with a weak schedule.
I would say that Palmieri is a classic example of a guy whose value goes down when he's traded, and he's a good player, and it's exciting to see him go to a better team. But Palmieri hasn't been good this year, so it's hard to say his value is going to go down. It's probably just going to stay the same, which is, I assume, be a 50, 55-ish point guy. Elon, when I was talking to you about what I should do with Palmieri, because he was on my roster, I had him in IR. All this time he's been injured and then traded, and then he was there ineligibly for me for as long as he's been in Long Island. And you were like, you told me you saw Palmieri as like a Beauvillier type. And I thought that was a pretty apt comparison. Like maybe Palmieri, of course, gets a couple more points than Beauvillier the rest of the way, but somebody who could be quiet on really any night and not someone you're expecting a really consistent offensive explosion out of.
Yeah, but also Beauvillier every once in a while has like a 2-goal game. And like I think Palmieri is definitely capable of that. So yeah, I think that is a decent comparison. Okay, so if you look at the Islanders at this point, like I said, they don't even play this week until Thursday. So I think if you have anyone not named Barzal, you might want to consider just dropping them.
Yeah.
Drop Palmieri, drop Nelson, like Eberle, maybe even. I don't know, maybe he's a little tougher to drop, Beauvillier, Bailey, but maybe you can even be sneaky, right? Drop them and then try to get them back for the Thursday, Friday, Sunday at the end of the week. I think that's your best case scenario if you can pull it off. Okay, so another 3-3-3 team is Chicago, who have a weak schedule, so it's really hard to recommend anyone aside from Kane and DeBrincat, maybe Connor Murphy for those purists. We were into Kirby Dach when he returned, and his assist versus Columbus in the 4-3 on Saturday brought him to 4 points in his last 6 games, so not bad playing with DeBrincat and Strome. So they've split up Kane and DeBrincat. Kane was centered by Suter, and Hagel was on that first line in Saturday's win. Anyways, I don't know. Kirby Dach, like, I like him. If he had a better schedule, I'd be into him. But 4 points in 6 games, I think he's going to continue to play it around that clip. I just don't know if that's worth it for you with a weak schedule.
Agreed. And we talked about him almost being droppable, right? Just as he'd come back, and we're like, we didn't see any instant returns, and we didn't see his deployment was as primo as we thought it could be. So those are all reasons to say, I'll stream in Kirby Dach if and when I need him, but I'm not going to hold him while I could get 4 games out of someone else.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Nashville's another 3-3-3 team, and unfortunately, they've lost Eli Tolvanen. He's week to week with a lower body injury. Huge loss for a team. They're already without Philip Forsberg, who's on the IR with his upper body injury. On the plus side, they did get Ryan Ellis back. He returned from his injury on Saturday versus Tampa. No points. The Preds got shut out 3-0, and Ellis didn't get power play time. Ekholm was on the second power play, though the Preds played today, and I see that Ryan Ellis did get a point today. They're actually in overtime right now, Dallas and Nashville. So maybe by the time we're done with the show, we'll see if Ellis does anything else. But he scored a regular goal or power? Yeah, even strength goal. I'll just check quickly on Frozen Tools to see if Ellis was on the power play today. And no, so still not. It's like Yossi on the top power play, Ekholm on the second power play. Ellis got like a couple minutes in there. So he's not as exciting to me at this point. Kind of like, I don't know who I should compare him to, like a PK Subban, maybe, like better than that, but I'm not sure. Yeah.
Well, if you look at PK Subban's schedule, so is Subban 4-4-4 or 4-3-4? Do you remember without
I'll bring that up in just a second. They're 4-4-3.
Okay, so 4-4-3 versus Ryan Ellis 3-3-3. I will take Ryan Ellis 3-3-3, right?
Okay.
Like if I were to do
Yeah.
the math and use Ellis's average points per game played or contributions if you're in a Cats league, I think I'd prefer Ellis, honestly, still to a handful of defensemen. He might be one of the exceptions as being a guy we're talking about towards the end of the show that you might not even want to consider dropping. I'd be
So then
happy to hold
maybe,
on to him.
yeah, on the flip side, he might be available in free agency. So maybe you could add him, though. I don't know. He's supposed to be this big offensive defenseman. He's gotten like 60-point paces in the past couple of years. Like, or if he like goes up and down between like going a 60-point pace and like a 40-point pace, but like not even getting top power play time is a little concerning. I guess Ekholm was someone who was supposed to get traded, but now Nashville's like in a playoff spot. So maybe that won't happen. So something to watch. Ellis is like good for sure. Like we've seen a good track record, but I don't love the fact this like non-power play deployment at the moment. Okay.
Yeah. Are you worried at all about UC Saros as a fantasy hold the rest of the season because they only play 3 times a week and maybe he's still going to share time with Pekka Rinne. Like it looks like he's starting Saros is starting 3 out of 4 games or maybe even 2 out of 3 games down the stretch.
Well, I don't know, Brian, because like when you're looking at recently, like I think that Rene's generally been playing when it was a back-to-back. And if they go 3 games in a week, it might just be 3 games with no back-to-backs, which means they can just give Saros maybe more games that or the same number of games as he would have gotten with a 4-game week. So
yeah, you're exactly right. Rinne has only started on a back-to-back for the last 3 weeks.
Yes, I think they're going to ride Saros. They need him, right? They're in a playoff run now, so they don't have time to like be like, let's be fair, give Rinne his time. Like I think if Saros is doing well, Saros another great game today so far. He stopped 23 of 25 with 3 minutes to go in overtime. Not worried at all. I love Saros. And he's been so good that even if he plays like a game less, he's like just giving me like 10 couple points every time he plays. So I'm loving him. Okay, the last 3-3-3 team is the Ottawa Senators. So finally, we could talk about this guy I've mentioned a bunch of times on the show. How for real is Connor Brown? Like, how's he doing this? He has goals in 7 straight games. He potted another versus the Leafs on Saturday. Is he like a must add at this point, regardless of how crappy the Sens schedule is? Or at the very least, get him in for Monday, Wednesday? Like, okay, Ottawa plays Monday, Wednesday next week against Winnipeg, like we brought up. So is it like for sure, like at least get Connor Brown for those 2 games? Or do you think that this is going to for sure dry up just like your Buntings and your Ross Coltons?
Well, I think he's a little more reliable than your Buntings and your Ross Coltons. We've seen extended, or extended might be a stretch, no pun intended, but we've seen runs from Connor Brown in the past. But the thing is just that he's playing at 5-on-5 with Clark Bishop and Ryan Dzingel in the last game. And he's also on the second power play unit for the most part, which also has Ryan Dzingel, Michael Amadio, and Evgeny Dadonov. Like I love even at this point of the season, the Sens are still a collection of randoms. In fact, they're a collection of different randoms than they were for the first half of the season. All this to say, Connor Brown is not in prime territory to be producing. And I just love that it keeps coming. In fact, I love his shots, especially. Have you seen this? 18 shots in his last 4 games. And of course, that's part of this 7-game goal streak that he's on. Fantastic. He only has 1 assist there, though. So I know the second he stops scoring, I just don't have a lot of faith in any of his line mates taking the lead from there. I guess Ryan Dzingel can. The thing about Ryan Dzingel is he only ever really scores, but he also never shoots. Like for someone who's supposed to be a 20-ish, even a one-time 30 goal scorer, a lot of 0s and 1s in the shots on goal column. Also, his minutes are getting slashed pretty heavily too. But Connor Brown is like, I guess maybe like a Michael Backlund. He's like a coach's pet. He does a lot of things right. He can play defensively, and then he is able to cash in every so often and go on these little runs. So I put Connor Brown in Mikhail Backlund territory, which is higher than Ross Colton territory.
Okay, I'm with that. It's going to be tough for him to keep it up, right? He's got now 2 games against Hellebuck, who's been so good this year. So it'll be interesting to see if Brown could keep this streak going. It's a fun thing to be watching. And let's end with the Edmonton Oilers, who, man, kind of stinks if you drafted McDavid or Draisaitl at the top of your draft. Now you go into your fantasy playoffs and you've got 2 games next week and then 2 games the following week. Finally, we get 4 games in the finals. If you're still alive at that point, because you've got to survive 2 weeks with only 2 games from your Oilers studs. So I feel like I don't really know what to say here. Obviously, you're not going to drop a McDavid or a Draisaitl. Nugent Hopkins managers are lucky to have him stashed in IR. Apparently, he'll be back next week. So you just get to keep him stashed until Friday, and then you could bring him in. Yeah, I don't know. Definitely don't hold Puljujarvi. Don't hold Yamamoto. I guess like we discussed how maybe Barry and Nurse are tough, probably too good to drop. So I don't know. I don't really have a question about Edmonton. It's just kind of bad luck. Brian, how do you feel? You have McDavid in the cupful.
Yeah.
It's a bummer.
Yeah, I wish I was smarter and had started trying to trade. I actually tried to trade McDavid at the deadline, which I could never see myself doing, but it was just an opportunity to add some more games played. I failed. So I still have Connor McDavid, and I just have to hope that he can do in 2 games what other superstars are still doing in 3. And like his point totals for the year suggest, or 3 or 4 games, his point totals for the year suggest that McDavid is capable of
Oh, for
doing this.
sure. Yeah.
So I'm really just going to cross my fingers and hold my breath that Connor McDavid can put up enough to get me through to a round where the Edmonton Oilers play more often. But I think outside of him and Draisaitl, and thank goodness, as you said, Nugent Hopkins is in IR, I don't think any Oiler, aside from maybe Tyson Barrie, is worth holding. Like,
Yeah,
I honestly, I don't know if I'd hold Nurse. Like, if I could swap Nurse for Ellis, Nurse plays 4 times over the next 2 weeks. That's brutal. That's a killer.
Let me just bring up his couple points are like pretty amazing, right? I guess like he's been a
based
little
on some
quiet.
crazy goal scoring.
Oh, so you say the goal scoring is a little bit unsustainable. All right.
Well,
Hey,
it's sort of like he's
I
like
can't fault you.
he's the second half Jeff Petrie, right? He's doing in the second half what Jeff Petrie was doing in the first before he fell off. And I feel like we all saw the Jeff Petrie trajectory change, and so we can assume the same for Nurse. I love that his shots are still there. He'll get as many shots in 2 games as many defensemen get in 4 games. Like he's 3, 4, 6 shots in a night. That's fantastic. But I just don't know that he's quite good enough to keep. Mike Smith also, I would cut, even if I liked him, Elon, at 2 games a week, especially because one of these games in each of the next 2 weeks is on a really heavy night, right? So you're not even likely to, like, you could get more games, like optimize your roster a lot better by not holding an Edmonton Oiler if you don't absolutely need to, which you do if you have McDavid and Draisaitl and maybe Barrie and maybe Nurse, but really no one else.
Yeah, that's right. And Mike Smith for sure, because also Edmonton plays Friday, Saturday next week. And that's assuming, by the way, this Friday game even happens. Like we said, that's against Vancouver. We're hoping that game will happen, but it's possible it doesn't. But yeah, like it's going to be a back-to-back if it does happen, right? So Mike Smith is going to give you 1 game next week, and they'll play Koskinen in the other game. So yeah, I don't see why you would hold him if you could get like a Linus Allmark in free agency. Just make that swap, and it sucks, but you have to do it. Okay, Brian, so we've done it. We've gone through all 31 teams, ranking them all the way from Las Vegas all the way down to Edmonton. Best schedule to worst schedule in the next 3 weeks. We really hope everyone enjoyed the show that listened to it. And we thank you so much for sticking with us all season. We're wishing you the best of luck going into your fantasy playoffs. I want to hear about a lot of championship teams. Tweet at us at Keeping Karlsson. Keep us up to date with how things are going. We're happy to give you any tips and tricks along the way. Also, not too late to come join our Discord community, right? Like come join for the playoffs, hang out for a month, and you could always leave for the summer. Though actually, we should mention that if you are a patron or thinking of becoming a patron, we're going to, as always, decrease the required pledge amount to get all of our perks from $5 to $1. We always do over the summer, basically just any amount. We just want you to stick around in the summer. So not a bad time to sign up to be a patron. Won't even cost you that much to hang out with us, and we'll try our best to give you advice. You hang out with Brian, myself, Ben, Lewis, all the smart people in the Keeping Karlsson community.
And this week, you'll get a bonus episode, right? We have a patron cast coming up on Wednesday. Patrons only episode where you can ask us anything. We've got a great list of questions this week, this month too. So you can join before April 14th, which is the date of the patron cast, or even if you join us after that at keepingkarlsson.com/patron, you will still have access to that and all archived patron casts.
Yeah, there's been some fun ones over the years. By the way, Mason is pointing out, Brian, that when you said Nurse is like the second half Petrie, like Nurse has been good all year long. He hasn't been, he's like the all season Petrie, if Petrie had done it all year. But you're saying you still don't see it as sustainable.
I think I meant more in goal scoring.
Okay.
I'm just seeing like Nurse had, I don't know, Nurse still had like 5 goals over his first 25 games, which is pretty good for a defenseman.
Yeah, Nurse is having a monster season. It's too bad that you even have to like be thinking of a decision like this at this point. Just sucks the schedule has to be this way. Okay, Brian, this was a blast. I guess I've already said my thank yous to talk about the page. So keepingkarlsson.com/patron if you have any interest. And if you are currently a patron, don't leave. Please, you could just decrease the amount. We'd love for you to stick around with us in the summer. But okay, let's cue the outro music, Brian. Let's send everybody home.
All right. With this, All right. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dauber Hockey and powered by our patrons. Logo art by BrandonWeeb.com. Outro music from Pat Roach. This episode was researched with help from Dauber Hockey, Frozen Pool, Dauber Prospects, Natural Stat Trick, Evolving Hockey, Cap Friendly, HockeyGoalies.org, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, Elite Prospects, and NBC Sports Edge.
Great job. Great job as always. Brian, this was so much fun. Looking forward to talking to you on Wednesday for the Patron Cast.
Until then, remember, Patron Casts and Fantasy Hockey are not just for our patrons, they're for everyone.
I mean, the Patron Cast is for patrons.
Okay. Yeah, but everyone can be a patron.
That's true. Okay. Thanks and bye. Okay. Fun show. And there wasn't the buzz in the end. We went away once we started.
That's so great. I'm glad I took 20 minutes to restart and update my computer.
No, I think it helped. Okay, so I better go. Bye. Talk to you later.
Okay, bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks so much.
Bye, chat. Thanks for being here. Spicing it up as always.
End stream. And stop recording.